Good afternoon. The August 22nd, 2023 board session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please. Here.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Mr. Rendell.
I'm here.
Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first topic in presentation is by the world's best intergalactic athletics director, Mr. Kevin Robinson, please. Also with him is going to be the world's best intergalactic assistant superintendent, Ms. Sue Hand. So the floor is yours, Mr. Robinson.
First of all, thank you to the board and to Dr. Rendell for this opportunity. I want to say thanks for the opportunity for presenting to you guys today. And I'm not worthy of that introduction, but I certainly appreciate it. Anyway.
We just got it off the news channel. It's official. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So the basis for the vision for athletics that we have and that I have and that I share and I'm trying to get out to the community is that athletics represents a substantial part of the overall educational experience in our schools. In terms of the hours of the day, the attention that it's given to, from all the stakeholders in the community, from the administration at the schools to the community members, the businesses, things like that. So I do believe that the strength of our community lies in the skill set of the individuals within our community. So that strength can only affect change when the individual skill set is put to use to achieve a positive result within our community. So there's a famous African proverb that I'm sure that you've all heard, it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. So I think that we need to get back to that concept by inviting more community involvement and reducing barriers to entry whenever possible. So every high school, middle school, and elementary school is a village. We need to value the unique skill set of each person within our communities, and through open dialogue and conversations, we can identify skill sets that are valuable to the educational experiences of our students, and athletics provides the conduit to share those skills. So some of the benefits of sports participation, according to peer-reviewed studies, students who participate in sports and engage in physical activity tend to benefit from higher academic achievement, healthy lifestyle habits that extend into adulthood, increased mental health benefits in the form of higher self-esteem and confidence, and increased career and employment success in the form of higher average salaries. So a typical athlete progression that you would see from youth on up into adulthood. So it starts out typically at the elementary school level. It may be in an aftercare program. It may be in a youth sports organization. But these are typically going to be about 6-week programs because your younger kids don't have the kind of attention span that more of your high school kids do. It would be about 3 days a week with typically about one game per week, one competition per week, and that would just kind of be like almost like a formative assessment type competition. So that's the approach. So there's a variety of different age level sports that you would play there. Adaptations like flag football, t-ball, basketball can be adapted as well in terms of goal height. Wrestling, you can pretty much wrestle with anybody, when it comes to that, but you get the idea. So at this stage, kids should be experimenting with a lot of different sports to find out the ones that they actually enjoy. So that should be a big push at this age. So the things that they enjoy, they're going to want to do more, and they're going to drag their parents to more, and that kind of thing. So I do believe that there should be some sort of reward system for participating in sports and multiple sports, and that being the focus. So by the time they transition to middle school, you're now getting into more of the after-school sports type activities. Those tend to be a little bit longer, 9-week programs. I know that we have 9-week programs in our middle schools. Those are going to be 5 days a week. You'll typically have about 1 to 2 games per week during that time, depending on the week and whether you're on a bye or whatever the case may be. So the sports that are offered at that level really need to be comparable to what they were getting at the elementary school level in a lot of their youth sports and programs like that, so that you can continue those interests. And also to kind of mirror what you're getting at the high school level as well, so that they can transition well into high school. But your middle school kids are going to begin to gravitate to sports that pique their interest. At this stage, they might be that might be 3 or 4 sports. But they're also going to start attending summer athletic skills camps. They will also experiment with club and travel teams, things like that. So that's kind of what that stage of their athletic career looks like. And then when they transition into the high school level, you got full FHSAA seasons that are anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks, depending on how far they go in state series competition. And we offer a full complement of sports. I'll get to that here in a little while. Of all the sports that we offer, we've got 16 FHSA-sponsored sports that we offer at the high school levels here in Brevard. So by this stage, athletes should know the sports that they enjoy, and they should be narrowing it down to the ones that they could potentially excel at the next level if they're looking to play in college. The focus at that stage is going to be being competitive at the state and possibly the national level. There's a lot of opportunities to compete at the national level as well. By the time they get to college, the athlete should have chosen the sport that is their sport, that's what they're specializing in, and there should be an unwavering passion for that sport, because they're going to be devoting year-round time to that sport. So it's important that it's something that they love doing and can excel at. So the focus there is going to be on, obviously, for anybody who's ever competed in college, it's on winning national championships and gaining individual All-American status. And then if they're lucky enough to move on to the professional and Olympic level, then once they reach that stage, they're one of the nation's and world's elite level athletes. So this is their profession, it's their job, it's what they do. So those athletes spend a majority of their time in pursuit of perfection of their sport. So a love and passion for that sport that would be unimaginable to most. That's required. In order to attain success in that sport, that's actually required. So the focus there is going to be on winning world and Olympic championships, plain and simple. That's what they do. That's what they live for. So, kind of a review of some of the athletic accomplishments that we've had in this past year. So officially, we've added 3 new FHSA-sponsored sports here in Brevard. We've added competitive cheer, we've added girls wrestling, and beach volleyball. So moving things in a positive direction in terms of our offerings there. We've also been able to supply and purchase equipment for our intramural sports at the middle school level for all 11 of our middle schools. And we'll talk about those intramural sports in a minute. But soccer and volleyball, for volleyball, we just finished up with the sleeve installation in July at all of our middle schools. That was quite an undertaking. So many of our ongoing athletic facility grades, which Sue's going to talk about here in a minute in her portion of the presentation, but we were also able to negotiate a new MCOA contract, and that is huge for our schools. So but it's also huge for our officials as well. So now, instead of dealing with the individual schools for each, in terms of the billing process, we centralized the billing process here at the district, so that we can be more effective in terms of getting that bill paid. But the biggest thing is that we picked up the cost, and thanks to the board for approving that, they picked up the cost of that, the officials' fees for all the schools. And that's going to be huge, because that means that they're able to take that money that they that they make from their ticket sales and actually put that back into equipment, supplies, all the things that they need. You know, some schools are even looking at doing school-initiated projects that have been needed for quite some time. So it gives them a solution and a way to do that. So I also want to thank Dr. Sullivan and Molly Vega for their work on that last spring, because they were the ones who did a lot of work in completing those negotiations and getting that contract approved. So I think I got this out of order a little bit. Okay, so this is just kind of a summary of some of our accomplishments that we had. In terms of our team championships, district-wide, we had 35 district championship teams here in Brevard, 14 regional championships, 41 state playoff appearances, 11 state finals appearances, and 3 state championship teams. So pretty tremendous as a county right there, and it shows the strength of our athletic teams. So individually, in our individual sports like cross country, swimming, wrestling, track and field, those kinds of sports like that, where they can win individual titles. We won 73 district championships, 49 region championships, 137 state tournament appearances, and 60 state medalists. And overall, we took home 10 state championships from our individuals. So quite an accomplishment, and I'm always amazed by the accomplishments of our schools when it comes to that, reaching the state level. So, okay, so where are we now? We've got 16 high schools that compete in the FHSA and the Cape Coast Conference in 16 different varsity and JV sports. We also have 11 middle schools that compete in 2 interscholastic sports, meaning that they compete against other schools. And then this year, now that we've secured all the equipment, we can start with 2 intramural sports, which are going to be soccer and volleyball. All right, so that's going to be a little bit of a new thing this year, but that's helping with the transition in our expansion. Okay. This is kind of a snapshot of what we offer here in Brevard Public Schools, and you'll see those are 16 sports that are FHSA-sponsored sports that we offer. As you can see, there's only actually 3 FHSA sports that we currently don't offer, and that's flag football, weightlifting, and water polo. We even offer, out of the ones that are not offered by the FHSA, but we do offer them in our communities, and they're strongly linked to our high schools. We've got rugby, and I know some of our rugby people here today. We have surf that's really big in our beachside schools, and then we have crew down in Melbourne that we offer as well. So those are all again, in line with giving opportunities to kids to compete where their passion is. And again, on the middle school, and this is kind of on a scheduling type level, those are your interscholastic sports. So first 9 weeks, we're involved in basketball. So we're in the full basketball season right now. The September 5th, we'll start our actual games. They're in practice phase right now. Track and field will be the third 9 weeks when they get back from the winter break. Soccer is the second 9 weeks. That will be at the completion of basketball season. So we try not to overlap too much when it comes to those sports to give everybody opportunities. But the volleyball is going to be the fourth 9 weeks, and we kind of decided that because it's an indoor sport and it's really, really hot during that fourth 9 weeks. So we got a lot of really good feedback from our middle school athletic directors when it came to that, informing those schedules. Okay. This is a little bit about our organizational chart. Obviously, at the top starts with me and at the county athletic director. And I want to say thanks to Dr. Rendell and the board for the tremendous improvements that have been made in this position and continue to be made in elevating this position to director level as well. So the feedback that I've gotten from my athletic directors is that they really appreciate it because it shows a high level of appreciation from the board to athletics and what you guys are doing and your commitment to athletics in this county. So I want to say really, I appreciate that, and on behalf of all the athletic directors as well. So each individual high school and middle school has an athletic director, and those athletic directors are really the superstars of our schools, and they put in long hours to make sure that the programs at the school are organized and are running properly. Under their purview, they've got the athletic business manager, which basically is in charge of ticket sales, scheduling ticket takers, things like that. But they've also got the coaches that they manage. They've got the officials, which they coordinate, athletic trainers, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes as well. And they're volunteers, they're scorekeepers, they're announcers, all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of how our athletics organizational chart breaks down when it comes to our internal structure. The governance structure is for our sports. At the national level, we are under the NFHS, the National Federation of High School Associations. At the state level, we are under the FHSA. That's our governing body, and they are heavily influenced by the state legislature, as you guys know. So a lot of the rules that we get from the FHSA actually are as a result of decisions made in the legislature. So it's important that I think people understand that tie-in from the legislature to the FHSA. And then obviously on the local level, the school board, you guys are a big part of what we do in terms of how we implement those policies and procedures are implemented in our schools and governed at the local level. And then the Cape Coast Conference is our conference here in Brevard that is made of a collective of the high school athletic directors that is responsible for sponsoring championships, our Cape Coast Conference championships in all sports, and also the recognition programs within the Cape Coast Conference for coaches, athletes, things like that. So, okay, and in terms of our policies and procedures, and this kind of goes along with our governance structure as well, we go by the FHSA policies and handbook. So for people who are wondering, and I always get questions about this too, is what's the FHSA policy on this or that? Well, it's available on the FHSA.com website. It's under member services. So if you go to member services and then you go to rules and publications, you'll find the FHSA handbook right there. So I think it's important that everybody knows how to access that information so that we can all keep each other accountable in that respect. So a big impact on that FHSA policy, I will tell you, this year is House Bill 225. And that's regarding, mainly regarding non-traditional students and open enrollment as it pertains to our schools. So we had to do a little bit of re-education when it came to that this summer with our athletic directors and in terms of compliance and everything like that. There's about 7 different types of non-traditional students now that can actually participate in our school teams under a variety of different circumstances. You've got home education, charters, special schools, which here in Brevard is the only special school in that category is Brevard Virtual. So it kind of ties in with us as well, but also our non-member private schools, which we have those here, full-time FLVS students, and then even traditional public school students, this is new this year, whose school does not offer their sport. So they are able to play that sport at another public school that offers that sport. So that was something that's new this year that we're getting on board with. So a lot of changes in terms of policy, and those changes have come down and affected us at the school levels. So to make it a little bit easier, if it can be easier, The FHSA sent out a flow chart which kind of defines where students can go based on their non-traditional status, and there's 7 different types of non-traditional students. So that I have posted on the student activities webpage under student services. So that information is available on our website if people need to be able to look at that and see if it's possible to compete at this school or that school, and sort of the forms that they would need. BPS board policy governs us a lot as well. Obviously, you know, a lot of policies are either directly related to athletics or indirectly related to athletics when it comes to those board policies. And to kind of summarize that somewhat, we have the BPS athletic handbook, which is available again on that same student activities webpage. And that's kind of what we go by in terms of our individual high schools. And one of the things that I used to always tell my coaches when I was an athletic director was, if you take that BPS athletic handbook and you use that as a guide to do your own team handbook, then you're going to be in a good position, you know. So that's one of the things that we do, and we stress at that level as well. Okay. Okay, in terms of student athlete healthcare, part of that packet that kids have to do in order to, as a precondition to participate in any of our athletic teams, is they have to undergo an annual physical. So there's a new EL2 form that was put in place by the FHSAA, and that EL2 form is now, that physical form is now 5 pages long, but there's only 1 page that you actually have to turn into the school. And the intent on that was just to protect student privacy, and that was the major intent for that change in that form. So hopefully that answers questions. It's actually page 4 that is the only form that you need to turn in to the schools. Okay. Do you have athletic trainers in our school? I know that's a hot topic. Those are in high demand. It's a high demand profession, low supply. So that's a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a problem. We do have athletic trainers within our schools that are teachers, and they're teaching 6 out of 7 classes and doing athletic trainers. So that's another thing that I feel like needs to be revisited as well. You know, in terms of the structure of their day, if we could make for a more flexible schedule, that would certainly make the position more attractive. And to help, we've reached out to the community and gotten contracted services with Parish Medical, Health First. I think we're working on contract negotiations with 3D, and some of those places like that. So there's a lot of solutions that we're working on with our athletic trainers, because it's absolutely necessary within our schools for proper health care of our students. There are even some programs. Heritage High School has a really good sports medicine program that uses students to assist the athletic trainer in game time activities, and they can get volunteer hours. So that's a really awesome thing. And a lot of other schools do that as well, kind of on a voluntary basis with athletic trainers that they work with. So as you know, all of our coaches are required to do AED, CPR, and first aid training. So as part of that, we are looking to increase the amount of AEDs in our schools. We have placed an order for 52 new AED units. That contract was secured over the summer, and who we play for actually got the bid for new AED units, as you guys know, and then the maintenance with the pads and battery replacement that have to go on a regular basis was with School Health Corporation. So that's, moving forward, those are things that are improving at the schools for our students. And that's not just for our athletes, that's for everybody, that's for everybody at our school sites. And then obviously, as part of board policy 2431, heart screenings are a requirement of our student athletes, and who we play for really does a really good job with making sure that they set up screenings on a regular basis, on-site screenings at our schools. So they do a fantastic job with that, right? Transportation, this is, again, has been, kind of a hot topic within the athletics, community. And, getting teams to and from competitions is certainly an important part of the logistical operation of athletics as well. So we obviously need more drivers in order to expand sports offerings, if, that being what we're looking to do. So we do certainly appreciate the board for approving the recently approved pay raises for the drivers, because we do, in talking with transportation, we do believe that's going to increase our amount of drivers that we have available. And an increase in drivers is going to be an increase in those activity routes. And those are important for our athletic teams to be able to get to our games on time, but also have adequate warm-up time before our games. So those are some concerns, and hopefully that is alleviating those concerns. Some feedback that I've gotten when I go out to school sites and talk to principals and athletic directors, vans for schools would certainly help with the lighter transportation needs, where you may not necessarily need like a huge bus, but maybe for like a cross country team, a freshman volleyball team, wrestling team, or maybe even your throwers in track tend to be there earlier. So smaller groups that could fit, within, one or two vans that would be able to get them to their destination and in a safe capacity. So obviously there's compliance with state law that has to happen there. And Rashad's probably more of an expert on that than I am when it comes to those law changes and everything. But those are some feedback that I've gotten when I go out to schools. Okay, and so our Mid-Coast Officials Association, we have kind of a symbiotic relationship with those guys. Longtime partnership that's lasted over 55 years. So we want to certainly continue that. And as I said, we have that new contract in place that gained board approval in June. So that's been a huge help. It's a massive windfall for our schools, in terms of getting things done. So the MCOA is certainly, I've been in talks with them, they are certainly in support of expanding sports opportunities, but that's going to take a different level of recruitment of officials in order to be able to do that. So that's something that they're working on their end. The average age of their officials is getting higher and higher. So we need to do some things to recruit some younger people. So one of the programs that Steve Muzzy kind of informed me about that I wasn't aware of is that they actually have a level in their recruitment program that's part of the FHSA that allows 16-year-old kids to register as officials. So that's an interesting kind of requirement. Now, the thing with that is they can officiate like middle school competitions and JV competitions, and they would be officiating alongside a mentor official. So that's a really good opportunity to tap into those kids, because here's what's going to happen is if you get a kid started and you start training him at 16 years old, him or her, then what's going to happen is they're going to move into college. They're going to start officiating in college at intramurals, things like that. They're constantly needing help on the intramural level with people who know the rules and can effectively officiate at colleges. So then that gives them another 4 years of experience. If they've trained 6 years, then by the time they actually get out of college and then they get into their profession, they might want to continue giving back as officials when it comes to in their professional life. So I think that's a really good program that we need to tap into. So that was something that I found to be pretty interesting in my talks with the MCOA. Policy 27, there's been a focus on that with our officials associations, and that's FHSA and statewide. And that's something that we're looking at a renewed focus on our, administrative duties and supervisions and things like that, crowd control, hospitality to our officials in schools. And that kind of started last year and obviously is continuing on this year. It's a big topic of conversation at the compliance seminar in July. So we want to work together with our officials to make sure that we're collaborating for the best for our kids. Okay? And at this time, I'm going to hand this over to Sue for her portion.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin, if it's okay if we work through some questions with you
Yeah.
before Ms. Sue, if that's
Yep.
okay. I don't know, they never. That's on. So I'll go last, of course. Ms. Campbell, you had some questions, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we'll move around.
Yes, thank you so much for presenting the level of detail that you have. I've got a few questions. A couple of slides, you talked about the 11 middle schools, and of course we have several junior, senior highs, but my question was specifically for the intramurals. So at our schools that are junior, senior highs, those 7th and 8th graders have the opportunity to participate on all of the sports? Am I correct? Is that why we're not offering intramurals at those, because those students actually can participate on JV? They have the opportunity maybe if they make
Yes.
the team.
Yes, they have the
Okay.
opportunity to compete.
Okay.
Like, for example, soccer and volleyball, they have the opportunity to compete at the junior, senior high school level
Right.
at those sports.
So there's not the same level of need for that.
So typically what you would have is like let's say in a volleyball type situation, somebody comes in as a 7th grader, 8th grader, they would typically, in those junior, senior high schools, they would be on the freshman team,
Right.
So I think
But
you
they have the
a daughter
opportunity
on the
to
freshman
play.
team
I do.
currently,
Right,
don't
up
you?
to 6 years on
Yeah.
FHSA A level sport.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
And just so you know, those other sports that aren't on that ladder, the soccers and stuff like that, sometimes there may be some intramurals that are played between that 7th and 8th graders is what
Right.
we had talked
Yeah,
about.
I guess I'm just trying to get down to the reason why we're only offering those intramurals at the 11 standalone middle schools is because they don't have those opportunities.
They
you
don't
know.
have those opportunities.
So on the org chart, you talked about the athletic business manager. Do all of our high schools have this position?
That's a supplemented position, yes.
Okay, so
all of our-
it's something that somebody has on top. We don't have an athletic business manager. That's like their only job, but that's like a stipend or?
stipend position, yes.
Okay, so they're doing something else. They could be the bookkeeper who's, well, probably not the bookkeeper, but someone else who's also getting that.
They could be a regular teacher. They wouldn't be the
Okay.
bookkeeper.
Right.
Right.
Because that would be a conflict of interest.
Right, that's true. That's true.
So,
But they could be someone, they could be, a cafeteria staff person or
Yes.
whatever, and then
Correct.
they're doing this also.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Because I was thinking, I don't think we have I'm not sure that's a full-time job. I'm sure sometimes, some weeks it probably is. It could be a full-time job. I wanted to go back to the non-traditional student question. So if I actually thought that we already had this in place, that if a school didn't offer, for example, West Shore and Edgewood don't have football, that a kid who played football could actually play football for another school. But you're telling me that's new.
that's new.
Okay, so when it comes to like charter school families that, let's say some of our charter schools don't have a basketball team, an FHA, then they will be able to come and try out for one of our traditional public
Absolutely,
RBPS teams.
yes.
Now, I don't know, are there rules in place that you can't like go from school to school to school until you get on a team? Or is there like, you got to pick one or you can just keep going? I mean, could a charter school or a homeschool family or whatever, go to every school's tryout in their vicinity and whichever one gets them?
So you have to register your intent with the school
Okay,
of participation, which means that you would, a lot of schools are on athletic clearance, which is an online clearance. So you would register on athletic clearance, or you would turn in the school's athletic packet.
right,
That would be registering your intent to compete
Right.
at that school. And then in which case also another level to this with those non-traditional students is once the school has collected all those forms from them, whether it be the EL14 form, the EL7 form, the EL12, whatever applies to them in that flow chart, the school would then register that athlete with the FHSAA
okay,
through an EL13 form that is online on Home Campus. Home Campus is our eligibility database that we have with the FHSA.
So then
Each-
you're with that school,
Yes.
right? And then
Yeah.
you can't go pick a different school to be on a different team for that school year at least.
So
Potentially.
if you, so
I don't want to get too
ask
far
that
in
question
the weeds,
again.
but I'm just trying to picture someone who, okay, well, my school doesn't have, so in the fall, I'm going to play football for this school. In the spring, I'm going to run track for this school, and we're running all around. It just seems like a lot for our schools, but I'm just trying to figure out how open did they make this for the schools that are coming, students who are coming from a school that doesn't have a team.
You
Even
play football at Merritt Island and track at Cocoa if you're a homeschooler.
If you're a homeschool kid, you can do that.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to register your intent at every one of those schools, and every one of those schools is going to have to go through that process again.
okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So I mean, I like the ability to open up. I know our homeschoolers have had the opportunity to do things like that for a while, but yeah, it can open up a lot of string of worms. Can of worms. Excuse me, mixing my metaphors there.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the officials training. I wanted to ask, is this something that we could potentially offer next summer, even using ESSER funds? We've had the summer camps. Can we do a 4-week? I don't know how long the training said, but hey, we're going to offer this training to this age and up, and then open the doors for potential. I mean, honestly, it's a great.
Yeah.
I have someone who's almost my age, and he's an engineer, but he works. He does these on the, just for a little side money, right? So it's a great opportunity for students in college, in high school, or whatever. But I would love to see us maybe explore the idea of working with MCOA and offering that training, maybe with a little bit of leftover ESSER money with our summer opportunities next summer to open those doors, because that's a great opportunity for kids to make some cash
Yep.
and
Yeah.
us to build our own farm of officials.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Trent?
It's already on. How about that? Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's impressive to see all the things that are moving behind the scenes, and when you have the right pieces in place, it makes everyone's job a little bit easier. But I too, I want to piggyback on the officiating. I mean, that pool has been dwindling, and I know you guys are going to be doing this because it really has. I'm friends with many officials, like in high school basketball, that it's like a little sorority or fraternity that's really gotten small, and that they're concerned with that. So if we can, in any way get a bigger pool early on, getting kids, it's a great way to earn extra money in summers. I'm talking about baseball, Little League, and it's a lifelong passion for many of these. Again, one of my good friends is an accountant, and he's in year 30 in officiating basketball, and it's just because of not the money anymore, but any way we can and put that out there, and let the students understand that, again, this could be something for them for life. I know there's a lot going on, and I appreciate exposing kids at an early age. I like the shortened time frame, obviously. Get a little taste of everything. Specializing at early ages kind of irritates me, when I see that, because a broad range of activities is what we need. So I just want to stay out of your way. Keep going. I appreciate it. If you need anything from us, you know where we're at.
Thanks.
Mr. Trent, thank you so much. Ms. Wright?
Okay, I'll be really quick. I had a couple questions, and I know that they're probably going to require a little bit of digging and information. If you could just get this in the future to us. But what percentage of our secondary students are participating in athletics of some sort? I would like to know what that number is. Yep. And then I also would like to know how many of our students are receiving sports scholarships on a yearly basis, just so that we have that information as well. I am 100% in favor of expanding athletics into our elementary. I'm going to shout out to Port St. John Little League right now, because we're Port St. John Little League people, and I can just tell you I have seen things happen on that field. I have seen community shine at its best. I have seen kids that came to us that struggled with mental health, that had attempted to take their lives, and be part of a team, and over the years just bloom into this person that they needed. They needed that community, they needed that team. And I'm like, if we could start getting our kids at an elementary level to buy into a sport like that, like what a difference that can make for them all the way around. So I am 100% in favor of this. The one thing I wanted to also shout out to Parrish, because I saw that you mentioned them, Dr. Alada, they do health physicals in the North End. They do them for, I think it's like 10 or 20 bucks. I took my daughter to participate in it because I wanted to see what was going on. I'm like, let's see what's happening here. I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. I mean, they had kids lined up everywhere, and they had it down to, fine science. And so shout out to Parrish for providing such a huge need to our community like that. The only other thing I would say is when it comes to sports, communication is key. I'm sure every one of us up here has received emails that maybe communication isn't given, or it's given through maybe a club or something outside of school. And so that is really, really important, is just to make sure that we're across the board. That way every student has the ability or a chance, because we don't want them to miss it because they just didn't hear about it. And then they find out after the fact, hey, I missed this really cool opportunity. But yeah, I'm excited about this. This could be really, really, really cool and set us apart from other districts around the state. So thank you.
Thanks.
So I have a couple of things. I saw Ms. Hannah, I thought you'd get in there. I did want to say that across the board, athletic participation over the last 20 years has gone down. And when you look at some of the areas that they are very successful, is when they've put them into the elementary schools to get the programs going. It's become very easy for families to be able to tell the kids, stay there, watch TV, play on the playground, play on the video games and stuff like that, because one of the problems that Kevin and I were looking at when this thing was coming together is that our recreational leagues and our travel ball leagues are so costly that they're actually inhibiting many of our low socioeconomic families from participating. So what ends up happening is these children are not given that opportunity. And in some cases, that's where some of our discipline comes from and stuff like that in middle school. I'll give you an example. Senator Montford, head of the Superintendent's Association, told me that when I was telling him about what we were doing, and he said, Matt, when I was in school, what ended up happening was I was a principal of a middle school, and I brought middle school football back. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about for next year. But as he was doing that, he said that his discipline rates went down significantly inside of his school. And he said he got a lot of blowback in the beginning, but his discipline rates went down. His entire school took a school culture of team and unity and everything else that he had never seen before that happening. So part of what we're doing is training some of those attributes, the self-esteem, build lifelong relationships, develop character, teamwork, and skills. Kids getting healthier. Academically, they perform higher. There's actual statistics that show about many of the chemicals that are released during physical activity that increase academic performance. And there's also the dream, which is what the Tourism and Tax Development is looking at this, and they're going to come on and support Kevin and everything else, is that they want to create championship Town USA here in Brevard. And what they want to do is start hosting the public school championships from across the state of Florida here. Kind of like what we did with the AAU National Olympics that we had years ago, is to start doing that kind of stuff. But we can't get there. That's many years down the way. You can't get there until you start building the infrastructure and everything else.
Better build a convention
Facilities and
center.
everything else, that's it. But I did want to talk through some of it, and you did an amazing job of hitting like all of the components that we have, because we're in here today. We have people from softball, people from fencing, people from rugby that are here today. The issue that we have is there's so many other components that not many people think about: the transportation, the umpires and everything else. But I kind of wanted to walk it through from a vision perspective of what we were talking about is that if we have a K through 12 vertical integration program where the children are coming in kindergarten, learning how to golf, learning how to play soccer, learning how to play basketball, learning how to do all of those on a 6-week tournament type situation, then they'll be turned on to that and then move forward into middle school and high school. The only way to accomplish that is like we had said in some of the groups that are here, are to come in with our community-based partners. The fast pitch softball team that was here said they've been a rec league in Brevard for over 50 years. Yep. Those are the kind of teams that in Port St. John Little League and everything else that would assist with those Little League programs in the 6 weeks, because we talked about we didn't want these to become the thing where they're competing with the rec leagues, but actually enhancing them. So those rec leagues would come in. Perfect example, and Ms. Suhan worked out a facilities use agreement recently. Suntree Elementary paired up with Suntree Soccer, right? And they're using the facility. And what he's doing is he's coming in, he's mowing the grass, he's keeping everything down as part of it. But then he's also being able to utilize the students to start playing soccer more often. And in return, they become a part of his organization, and he benefits, we benefit, everybody goes through. And quite frankly, our facility gets taken care of so that the guys don't have to mow it as much, right? So that's kind of the 6-week program in the beginning. And then moving into the middle school and high school, I mean, the rowing in this community is very, very competitive, and not many people know that. We've had some of the best hockey players that have ever played in the collegiate level have come out of here. There's some of those things that are happening that are outside the box of what we normally offer, but through that club sport and intramurals, would be able to give them an honor to be able to do that. And you never know, like kids that are up in MIMS, there might be a kid that one day becomes one of the best hockey players, but he never knew about it until he had an opportunity. Right. So I wanted to say thank you for all of those, and I kind of wanted to set it through. The other thing that we were speaking about is that we have a lot of kids that they play the sports, and then at the end of the year, they don't have an opportunity, they don't know how to promote themselves for college. I had a student last night at the Vieira high school parental thing. What we were talking about is we already have coaches inside the community that are willing to host combines. So say you have a football combine. We already have one that goes on, but why is it that we don't host one for soccer, for all of those things? Allow the coaches to come from around the United States to see our athletes and then be able to promote them right there. It's a great opportunity. So from K through 12, all the way through the combine and everything else, we have this structure where we're competing and bringing all of those benefits that we spoke of earlier. I wanted to say thank you, Kevin. I'll be honest, and everybody else we've talked about it. Kevin's here until like 7, 8 o'clock at night some nights. I call him just to check in on something. He says, I'm still here. And I'm like, this is insane. So I really wanted to say thank you because I know that all of the other components that are part of this are amazing. And I did want to say thank you to some of the people that are in the audience that came today, my rugby team. They're really excited. Just so you guys know, in 2008, we formed a rugby team for high school. The men went out and won the state championship. First year. And I think, Ray, did the women win that year too? I think the girls rugby team won the state championship too.
They had to go up against the satellite league, which was the varsity program at the time.
Yeah. So one of them won the state championship. So in Brevard, we held it. Well, Brevard School won the state championship. So the thing is that the issue is that there's so many opportunities, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of the kids and I'm trying to use this as an example, that 2008, we had a lot of kids that were on our football team that were not good at football. They just weren't, right? But they fit that bill to play rugby. And then they won a state championship. So giving those kids those opportunities to compete. And I wanted to give you a personal plug because we faced off in coaching wrestling against each other. And he was one of the best coaches because his Bayside team was very technical and they would wrestle. And it would always give us a hell of a time when we were trying to wrestle him. So Kevin, thank you so much for this. I wanted to just kind of walk through that whole process of vision of allowing that vertical integration so that the kids can start getting into it for those that didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, after Sue does her piece, there's a couple of more things.
Okay.
But yeah,
Miss Sue.
definitely. I felt like this was a good place to put her
All right.
facility stuff in.
It's always a good place to add, Sue.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. So I just want to start by saying what a great collaborator Kevin has been. You may or may not know, but Kevin is bunking in our office.
Oh,
And we have gotten so much work done together
Oh,
around
good.
athletics. It is just really awesome to have him co-located with facilities, and we've gotten through a whole lot of issues together, and we are planning together. So a lot of what I'll talk about today is or will be a result of us collaborating. So appreciate the effort on athletics, and also want to say I'm a product of the high school athletic system, and all of the benefits that you mentioned, I validate every single one of them as a result of being involved in athletics as a kid. It was just an awesome experience. So, and I wish I was a professional athlete, but I'm not. So I want to start a little bit about district funding for athletics. And, we're in a space now where you're seeing a lot of construction projects around athletics, and it all looks great, but we weren't there like 3 years ago. So we literally had almost no funding for athletics a few years ago. So we've made a big leap into doing much better in supporting our athletic endeavors. So the two sources of funding for athletics right now are sales surtax, the 2020 surtax, as well as a portion of capital. And neither of these became available until like 2021. And here's why. On the capital side, you can kind of see how our capital is based on our property tax values, and our property tax values were pretty low in the early
Yeah.
2010s and such. So there really there wasn't enough available for facility renewal, much less athletics. So nothing really was happening. You see in 2019-20, that's when the sales surtax came into play and our property values started to increase. So a couple things happened at the same time that are now allowing us to do some better investments in athletics. So the 2014 sales tax did not include athletics at all. We were struggling from the lack of capital and just needing to invest in air conditioning in some of our building systems. 2020 program, we did have some investment planned in the 2020 program, $7.6 million over 6 years. But because we've had some really good revenue experience with the 2020 sales tax, we've been able to add some projects, a lot of which are in the athletics realm. And we're also able to kind of couple that money with capital to do better projects. So the tracks, the rubberized tracks are a great example of that, where we use the surtax money for the renewal portion and then use the capital portion for the rubberization. So it's really been a nice way to leverage our funds on either side of that equation. So when we do our capital programming, it's data-driven. And we get data from a lot of sources. Our folks in plant operations and maintenance have been doing assessments, and I'll show you some of the scary assessments in a few slides.
Oh, boy.
But we have gone through a lot of our sports facilities and rated them at each school. We've done playground assessments. Our outdoor basketball assessment is new this year, and that's one of the scary bad slides. Elementary pavilions, this is one of several circumstances where you have schools that have covered play pavilions and you have schools that do not. And on the elementary level, that's been one of the big asks from the elementary world, is to try to get every school a covered play pavilion. So been working kind of on that project, and I'll show you some of the progression on that. And then just as I mentioned, the collaboration with the county athletic director is a huge win for us, and I think that's going to help us do better work in the right order. And we want to be a partner at the table as you're talking about expanding athletic opportunities for our students, either at middle school or elementary level. There's a facility component to that. So when we start middle school football, we got to think through, where are they playing, who's buying the goalposts, who's lining the fields, all of those things, probably more maintenance on our part. So a lot of things like that we need to consider as we are expanding our athletic opportunities. So the next few slides are just an example of some of our condition assessments. This is just a screenshot of gym floors. And we've been working on gym floors for quite a while through our maintenance budget, and it really kills our maintenance budget. So what I proposed this year in the capital plan is $500,000 for athletics FF&E, and that'll pick up some things like scoreboards and goalposts and some of those sort of miscellaneous things that really haven't been on our inventory, but we're starting to inventory now, and we'll be able to support having safe and appropriate athletic facilities and not have to go through that painful experience of my scoreboard's broken and we'll get it fixed in a year or two. So that's been, I think, is going to be a big improvement. And then just to show you that we are sort of keeping track of these things. The gym floors, again, something we've been working on, and we can kind of see where we need to go next. The gym acoustical panels, this is a little bit of a different way. This one is sorted just on conditions that are failed or poor. So there is about $640,000 in the FY24 capital plan for gym acoustical panels. That's going to cover probably 2 to 3 of these schools. So this is going to be an ongoing project, and this is where the collaboration with Kevin comes in. That we who's first and who's second and who's eighth in terms of the needs at the school. So again, another example of our assessments. Middle school tracks, this is an area that has been requested and emphasized by our middle schools, and we're about to embark upon a project to design all of the failed middle school tracks, and then we're going to figure out how to do construction. I'm at the moment advocating for one big project where we put them all under one contractor and we do one middle school track project. Not funded for that yet, so we'll be talking through either some combination of sales tax and capital for that program. But I want to see what the costs are. This originally started as kind of a resurfacing type of project, and as we've done the high school tracks, we've discovered all sorts of interesting things, as you've seen in some of our construction contracts. So it may be more than just resurfacing, especially considering the condition. So we may have to redo the base, so that there may be more to it. We probably will put in curbs just to aid in preserving the track structure and making maintenance a little bit easier. So anyway, we want to do them all together, so we're doing the same approach for all of the middle school tracks. So you'll start to see some work on that coming up here in the next several months. This is the scary bad slide. I noticed I was out of those, I've been out of a couple schools, and I've seen some basketball hoops that are kind of degraded, and it's like, wow, we really need to do something about that. So, let's put some money in the program for, basketball hoop renewal. I'm thinking we're buying backboards and nets and rims. Well, it turns out we kind of need courts first, and then we need poles, and then we need backboards and hoops and rims. So this kind of gives you the scope of what we looked at and what we need. And this is kind of sorted by those that are in pretty bad shape. But you can see there's a large number of schools that are not in good shape with their outdoor basketball courts. So I had programmed $300,000, and that's not going to touch this at all. So this is going to be an ongoing, long-term program that comes to you every year in the capital program until we work our way through these schools. This is just another snapshot that's a little bit more, this is probably where we'll be starting. These are the worst of the worst schools. And we'll probably be starting in the Johnson Middle School arena, looking at that one to see what we can do with the resources that we have available. And then we'll probably start getting ahead of the game with doing some design and trying to standardize what we're putting back. But this is an area that has been neglected for a long time, and I wanted you to see that this is why we're going to be emphasizing this coming up in the future. This is an example of what caused me to start looking at this. And this is not uncommon. So if you're out at your schools and you're out in the backyard looking at your basketball facilities, this is what we have, and we need to do something about that. So I just want you to know this is why I'm paying attention to this.
Okay, can I ask a question real
Yes,
fast,
ma'am.
just because I'm curious? Of these schools that have the outdoor basketball courts, how many of them have indoor basketball courts? And
All the middle schools and the high schools.
okay, so I guess I'm just trying to, most of them are using the indoor basketball courts, obviously.
Correct,
So
right.
if this becomes an area that looks like every single one of our schools needs, is that the highest and best use, or should we
Right.
focus on the indoor area being what we use? You
So
know?
we started thinking about this on the elementary level. Like, that's what got me going in this arena. And then we did all of them and realized, wow, this is pretty bad district-wide. So your point is well taken, and this is why collaboration with Kevin's and his athletic directors is so important, because we'll get a sense of, yes, Johnson Middle School really uses that and really needs it, or yes, we would use it if we could. Stone was a good example. Their court was a mess, and we worked on this maybe 2-3 years ago, and it changed the culture of the school. So it was something that the principal brought up, through the chain, and we talked about it, and it was a game changer for Stone Middle School. So I think there's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Like, yes, elementary is absolutely where we need to do this, but there may be some select secondary schools as well.
Okay, thank you.
And if anybody, I wanted to come off the tail end of that. There's a documentary, I think it's on either Apple or it's on HBO, that talks about Prince George County up in Maryland. And what they did was in the 50s, they said, we want to do something for the kids, the inner city kids. And they put outdoor basketball courts. And then the amount of children that became NFL or NBA, I mean, it is incredible what that little town, it got to a point that for 20 years, their all-star team played the national all-star team and beat them. So the rest of the country played that one area, and because of it, and then when the introduction of crack and some of the other issues that happened inside the streets, they made the commitment to move indoors, and they continued to do that. It's a community, and when you're speaking to whether we should or shouldn't have them, I think it's without a doubt, but I think the other component is to, like Stone, utilize it in a way that other principals will understand how to use it for a school culture, and being able to allow children to come in maybe after hours and play on there too, because a lot of kids don't have an opportunity to do anything. right? If you go to the Temple Terrace Boys and Girls Club, they got a basketball in there. Those kids are always playing there. That's all they can do. They go grab a basketball and they go out there and play. They have a great and it's amazing, right? It's a great outlet for them and everything else. So providing this is amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you because a lot of those students really need to have that opportunity and would afford it.
Well, thanks. It'll be a while before we get through what we need to do
I
here.
know, but,
like, "Don't
but
thank
you
me
know
yet."
what?
We gotta
It's-
start.
It's the beginning. It's
Right.
the beginning of it. You know what I mean? And it takes a while to even speak to the principals about what it means and talk to them about it is like, you know, Kevin and I, like there's, when I get all excited about this, I'm not thinking this is going to happen in 6 months, but it's a long plan that might take 5 years before we start seeing the true results, but they're there, you know? Anyways, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. And then I just wanted to, I think you all have seen most of
Yeah.
this slide previously, but in terms of collaborating with our principals and our athletic directors, Kevin and secondary and elementary leading and learning, these are some of the things that are either on deck or on the radar that have come up that we're trying to work towards as best we can within the resources that we have. And then again, I talked extensively about collaboration, and as you'll see, the capital plan this year and capital plans going forward, there'll be a strong collaboration with Kevin to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the district as best we can with the resources we have to support the athletic programs. So kind of knowing what's coming up in terms of expanding middle school athletics or investments in elementary athletics, it's really important that we're at the table too, so we can make sure that we're there to support whatever programs we add to the district. And then just wanted to show you this is a multi-year snapshot of our capital plan as it relates to athletics. And so a couple things that I wanted to highlight. The green projects are multi-year projects that are actually done. So we finished getting AC in all of the high school locker rooms. We finished a pool lighting project. We're finishing up the track rubberization project this year. So this is an example of projects that are multi-year in nature that we're kind of getting to the end of what we need to do. The blue highlights are multi-year projects that are ongoing. So these are things that you're going to see again. And you can see the progression from fiscal year 21 to 24 that we're making a substantial difference in the investments that we're making in athletics. And then I wanted to highlight, I mentioned earlier, the athletics FF&E. That's going to be a game changer to help our maintenance department as well as help the schools and get those support equipment that they need in terms of like goalposts and scoreboards taken care of. And then I just wanted to highlight the Titusville baseball field relocation. That's a project we've been talking about in North Brevard for a while. We're going to start with design this year, but that's a $2 million to $2.5 million type of project. So that's going to be a multi-year effort as well. So some of the ones on the bottom of that list show you some of the other projects that we're thinking about that you'll see in future capital plans as well. And then I just wanted to highlight for you the sales surtax investments. As I mentioned earlier, we started with about 7.6 million, but we found that as time has gone on, we have additional needs or didn't really anticipate the scope of what we needed to do. So you see some pretty big investments in track renewal, the bleachers. We've done the schools that were in the program and have expanded to other schools that needed bleacher renewal. The stadium projects, primarily Space Coast, and then did some work at McClarty and Satellite. We've added some additional resources to playgrounds. We redid our playground assessment, and so more schools got playgrounds, and some additional schools got tennis courts. And there's probably more work to do in that arena, but I just wanted to show you that we are both using capital and surtax as we have resources available for our athletic programs. And then bottom line, my opinion is that we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. The board has been supportive of athletic investments, and we're putting those investments to good use at our schools. We're also doing some forward thinking so that we're looking ahead 3 to 5 years and making sure that we're prepared for what's on deck. Our demands are increasing, so we have deferred maintenance as well as expanding programs. So as both of those things come into play, you'll be seeing me asking you for more resources as time goes on. And some of those resources will be in the maintenance arena, not just in the capital arena. Our funding is right now relatively stable. It has been eroding as a result of sharing with charter schools, but with the economic growth, we also see an increase in our funding. So I feel like where we are now is probably pretty stable, assuming most everything else remains the same. And then just to remind everybody, sustainability always is a concern. So as we build more facilities, that means we have more facilities to maintain in the long term.
I wanted to say thank you. I noticed one of the things that we have is Titusville is in bad need. There's a couple of schools, just so everybody understands, that may not have the same facilities that others. Titusville's baseball field is off campus, basically, and there's some safety concerns there. So I appreciate you putting that together and moving that back on. If you guys notice, the Rockledge High School is the only high school that actually has to travel to their home games, right? McClarty Park. That's a big cost on all the athletic programs, on the bands, on everything else. And it's very difficult for them to get over there, and it's become a very big issue. And I appreciate you putting that on the scan of things. And then also Vieira High School has their own softball and baseball fields. They're not a part of it. And just so everybody understands, they play in the beautiful stadium that's over there. The problem with that is that they can't host state playoffs there because they're on the turf. So then when they go to win into the state playoffs, they have to shift and play over at the county park. And when they play at the county park, it's not their actual park. And they're not allowed to raise money with banners. They're not allowed to do all that stuff. So if you ask them, because everybody thinks, oh, you play in the USSSA stadium, there's all this other stuff, they'll be like, we would give it up in a heartbeat because they don't have their own stadium to raise their own money to do all those things. And UTRIP's really nice to work with us, and it is a beautiful stadium. But at the same time, eventually we're going to move towards that direction. And I know that's 1-3-5 years out, but the idea that they're there is really nice. So thank you so much. Mr. Kevin?
Okay, so a little bit about where we're going. Again, like I said, we're adding 2 new intramural sports to our middle school program, soccer and volleyball. And one thing I didn't mention is that I talked to the middle school ADs about jamborees at the end of the season. So it's typically like in an intramural type setting, you would play against teams that you have it within your school. You might form like 4 teams, and then you'd play against those 4 teams and that kind of thing. So it's just in a jamboree type setting, maybe you've got 2 or 3 schools that they can kind of come together, and then they can have like a little tournament type situation, like at the end of the season, something for the kids to look forward to in the intramurals and encourage them to go out and try that sport. And again, you'll hear me say this, time and time again, continue to expand sport offerings wherever feasible, and partnering with the community on ways to provide more opportunities for all kids. And that's huge. That's important. I think that, we have a strong community, and we need to continue to take advantage of that strong community and partner with each other's skill sets. Another thing that we're looking at moving forward is increasing event security. And so what I'm talking about there is in terms of our badging, making sure that our community coaches and volunteers, media are badged at the district level, that it's showing that they've got proper background checks and, clearance and everything like that. So I think that's huge, especially not only in like a game situation, but also in a practice type situation, because your practices are after school, they're on your campuses, and our kids are there. So it's important to make sure that the people that are around our kids are fully vetted. And in that game type situation too, we're looking at a field pass system. We've been devising a field pass system as well that we're going to roll out to the athletic directors. And so when you come into a game, obviously you come in through the front gate, but then you've got an inner gate around the field where we want to be able to control access on the field. So there would be a pass gate, a credential gate, where authorized people who could get past and get at field level would be able to gain a credential. It would be like created by the school, but it would be a bright colored credential that I could see from 100 yards away. If there was somebody who didn't have one, it'd be pretty obvious, but you'd be able to see those people, and they would be set up in different zones. I mean, obviously you would have your home side zone, you would have your visitor side zone, and then you would have like sort of a VIP zone where they might be on the curves of the track, but in designated areas, not necessarily having direct access to our sideline and our kids. So that's very important to us, especially in light of, things that have happened in the past and things like that. Moving forward, we feel it's an important thing to be able to control that environment in the event and on our sidelines. So that's kind of what we're looking at, moving forward, where we would like to be. Obviously, transitioning our intramural sports to interscholastic sports at the middle school level. We've been talking about that. So as we go into the phase of intramurals, and then if your jamborees work out really good, then maybe we can start to transition that into those seasons where they're actually, schools are competing against each other in volleyball. They're competing against each other in soccer. So those are all things that we want to try to keep moving in a positive direction. Obviously, that's going to take additional resources. It's going to take additional infrastructure. All those things that we've just mentioned. It's going to increase those, the strains put on those areas. So, and again, collaborating with our community organizations. We want to continue to do that and to make Brevard the destination for sports in Florida and the East Coast of the United States. So that's kind of where we want to be in terms of that. And I always, as I'm going out into the communities and talking to people, Dr. Rendell and myself and James Raymer went to the football game last Friday at O'Galley when O'Galley played Titusville. And so we got to see a lot of people. Got to talk to a lot of people, so just that's the stuff I live for. It's a really good experience. But a lot of what people will say to me is what can I do to help? They want to get involved. They want to know what they can do to help. So I want to say a couple of things there. So if in terms of our volunteers and community members, you guys have an incredible skill set, diverse skill set. And so I think just communicate with the schools and get involved and use that skill set in a positive way to contribute to essentially raising that child, like we said. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. Depending on your skill set, you can become a coach, you can become an official. We need officials. Announcer, scorekeepers. We're constantly in need of announcers and scorekeepers and things like that to help on kind of the back end of the house operations and all that kind of stuff. So those are some things that, in terms of your volunteers, parents and coaches, what I would say is mentor a child other than your own. And coaches do this a lot. I've seen parents do this a lot, take kids underneath their wing. A kid that's in high need, be a positive role model, how are you reacting to bad calls, bad officiating calls, be a positive role model so that the kids can see what it's supposed to look like, what good sportsmanship is supposed to look like. Partner with our schools in a collaborative manner, through constructive feedback. And allow kids to learn from mistakes and teach them through it, and use that as teaching tools and continue that educational process because that's what we're here for. I have a lot of teachers asking what they can do. And really the biggest feedback that I get from kids is that they just want to see their teachers at their games, So all teachers get into the games for free with their BPS badge. All right. So it doesn't matter if it's your school or somebody else's school, with the BPS badge, you're going to get in for free. So I would say show up to games, show up to games now and then. And the kids love to see you at games. And that just makes such a huge impact on them and a memorable experience. So administrators, I would say, use that game supervision as an opportunity to build relationships and increase your visibility in the community. That's huge, and that helps the officials out, but that also you're able to talk to people and get feedback in kind of a setting that's a little bit more relaxed as opposed to like maybe the principal's office or coming in with a complaint or something like that. You're able to get ahead of it. Business owners, civic organizations, Look for ways to provide assistance and support, not just to your own local schools, but also to schools in high need as well. And we've got a number of those throughout the community, because I can guarantee you that the kids and the families that you help support, they will remember that for many years to come, and they'll show it in terms of their customer loyalty to your organizations. And to the youth sports organizations, I would say just, work in collaboration with us. We're open to working in collaboration, and we want to do what's best for kids, So, so I'll close with this and say that, it's been said that character is who you are when no one's watching, but it's also who you are when everybody else is watching. Excuse me. Some say that sports builds character, and I tend to disagree with that. This is no more true than saying that getting a gym membership builds muscle. So what you do with the opportunity is what counts. So instead, sports reveals character. So how we self-reflect on our character is revealed will determine how we act with that information. Sports provides repeated opportunities to have your character tested. So how will you respond? If you win, will you taunt your opponent and act in an arrogant fashion, or will you help them up and commend them on a game well played? If you lose, will you complain about the officials and accuse the other team of cheating, or will you congratulate your opponent and self-reflect on how you can improve moving forward? We all have a choice in how we respond when we're met with adversity and even with success. So sports simply gives us an opportunity to respond to these scenarios often. And I know that people are going to hear this and they're going to think that I'm talking about them. Well, that's what self-reflection feels like. So the question is, how are you going to act on that information? And that right there, I believe, is the true value of sports. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, who won that game on Friday night? Was that O'Galley or was that Titus?
That was O'Galley.
It was pretty bad too, wasn't it?
Hey,
It was,
hey, calm down, calm down.
Yeah.
Leave Titusville
They're
alone.
not used to the challenges. The new school board members have not been a part of the Rockledge Cocoa Challenge. We usually will challenge each other and have some fun. So I'm
Okay.
just kind of stirring the pot a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much. I think some of the people that are here are going to ask the question, like, how do we help get involved? And I think what you had said before is you're going to contact like all the softball rec leagues and have a meeting and say, okay, we want to have some involvement inside of our schools. How can we make this work? And same thing, like the rugby gentlemen that are here have got the Florida Rugby Union and the National Rugby Union ready to go with support. And then you're just going to meet with them and say, okay, how do we make this go? Put together a facilities plan, put together a, 1, 2, 3, 4-year plan, whatever that is. Is that kind of the direction that you're giving?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That's the
All right.
idea.
All right.
He makes it sound so easy, Mr. Susan. Like, just
Yeah, I mean, because I hate to do what I do with my kids. So when they ask me something that's kind of, it's going to cost a lot of money, you need some more. We'll see. It's the we'll see. We got to we'll see. We'll see the budget. We'll see how the success. Because I mean, obviously these are important things, and they're originating for our students. But I appreciate the work that you've done and the thoughtful way that both of you, under the leadership of Dr. Rendell, of course, are leading us, and charge on in that thoughtful, collaborative way. I think that is very positive.
All right, man. Thank you.
thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You guys want to take a break for a second?
Nah.
Okay. Hey, guys, that's going to be the end of the athletics
Or do you
component
want
of
to take a
it.
break to say, I know you have.
No, that's okay. We were going to sit down, but if you guys can give your contact information to Mr. Kevin, and then we'll start the process. We would have had you guys come up and speak a little bit, but the time, it's an hour and 15 minutes into the meeting, and we have a bunch of other presentations. So if you guys can meet with him, give your contact information, and then what we'll do is start meeting on the how and the why and everything else, okay? Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys. Ms. Bias, you're next up. Let me read this out. Next topic is the presentation for Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services by Ms. Bias. You got this?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize that you wanted to, I apologize, I didn't know that you wanted to go talk to them, so. I was thinking keep rolling because we have a lot still on here. I don't know, honey.
Yes, so she's not by herself?
No, did you? That's why I'm like, I didn't, only reason I knew they were invited to come was because Fortin John Little League, my husband's on the board, so he was like, what's going on?
All right, I think I'm waiting. I see. Testing. Do you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead. We don't have to bang the gavel. We didn't recess. We didn't recess, so you're good.
All right. So thank you very much. Today we're going to talk about comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. So I appreciate the time here today to speak to this. Really focuses on disproportionality and simply, defined, it's over or under representation of a particular population or group. And so for the purpose of today, we'll be speaking to our students with disabilities and an over or under representation of that group. CCEIS is something that's monitored by the state for us in a couple of different categories. There are 3, and they're looking for
Hey, Mr. Susan, could y'all move it out to the hallway? Mr. Susan.
Mr. Susan.
So loud. I know.
Could you move it out to the hallway, please? Thank you.
All right, so for those 3 categories monitored, every district from them, and they're looking for any inequitable practices for students with disabilities by race and ethnicity. So those 3 categories are in identification. And so we're looking for ages 3 to 21, any over or under representation of students with disabilities by race in any of those 6 categories right there. The next area they monitor is in placement, ages 6 through 21, and we're looking at, again, an over or under representation in any of our self-contained classrooms or those classrooms where students are inside a regular class less than 40% of the day, or in separate schools. The third category in which they monitor to look for any disproportionality, any significant disproportionality, is discipline. And so in this area, they look at 4 different categories, ages 3 through 21. And in regards to out-of-school suspension, they'll look at 10 days or less, out-of-school suspension expulsions more than 10 days, in-school suspension 10 days or less, in-school suspension more than 10 days, and total disciplinary removal. So as far as CCEIS, the area of focus for us in Brevard is going to be in the area of discipline. There is some difference between the 2 besides the C. This one right here, CEIS, is coordinated. And with that, we have a voluntary means of using IDA funds to be preventative, to have early intervening supports in place so that we do not get to the place of CCEIS where we have significant disproportionality. So with that, it's not significantly disproportionate, and we can use the funds in IDA for children K-12 without disabilities. When we get to the place of CCEIS, we are now required to use 15% of the IDA funds to address the disproportionality that has been identified by the state. So for this, it can be for students with or without disabilities, and we, again, have been identified with significant disproportionality. I thought it would be important that we have been spending funds, IDA funds, in the CEIS in a voluntary basis. And some of those items, we've put some instructional assistants in place in kindergartens to support inclusion. We have some social workers who've been trained on Check and Connect mentoring. We split fund 3 MTSS trainers for problem solving. We also have a split funded mental health resource teacher, secondary content specialists who support secondary with learning strategies, and CPI, crisis prevention intervention, is another thing that we fund through IDA. We do all those not as a mandatory, but again, all prevention and things that we can do prior to being identified as disproportionate. So as far as the state considers the highest level of disproportionality and significant zone, it's in anything over a 3. So for that particular area, if that is identified, we have that group being 3 times more the rate of any other subgroup that we have. So if we look at, this is our data for the last 3 years for out-of-school suspension, and this is 10 days or fewer. And again, this is all our students with disabilities. We have 4 different race categories there, and you can see from 2021 all the way to our last year in 22-23, we don't have anything in the red zone for out-of-school suspension, 10 days or fewer. When we look at in-school suspension, again, 10 days or fewer, but the same races, and then going back 3 years, we also don't have anything in that red critical zone from the state as significant. Where's our opportunity to impact outcomes? So for this year, school year 23-24, we have been identified as CCEIS in the category of out-of-school suspension more than 10 days for students with disabilities in our African American category. I think it's important to note here, you'll notice all of those, and the one category is highlighted in red, and they use 2-year-old data or lag data. And I think that's really important because in 2021-22, that's what they use to identify us now in 23-24 with significant disproportionality. So I highlight that because that was the data. We're at 3.27 in that year. So our students with disabilities, African American, were more than 3 times more likely to get out-of-school suspension, 10 days or more. And we had that in the 3 range for 2 years. What's important to note is I added 22-23 because our target was to reduce that by 0.3 to get to 2.97. But looking at our data from last year, we actually have already dropped and in a 2.58. But the plan that we submit to the state is based on the 3.27. So we have 6 schools here that are identified because we submit a CCEIS plan to the state and identify exactly what we're going to do to mitigate then the 3.27. But again, it's on 2-year-old data. So when we look at the schools from last year, we came up with, we have about 84 students, I think, that were identified in that category over 10 days. 70% of them came from these 6 schools. So when we submit the plan to the state, we want to then strategically plan to support our 6 schools with the highest number of students. That's not to say that other schools didn't have a student with disability who African American over 10 days, but these were our schools that had the highest number for last school year.
What's the difference between the ones with the asterisks?
The asterisks are actually for 2 years ago, we had CCEIS for in-school suspension over 10 days, same subgroup, students with disabilities, African American. So thank you. So now 2 years later, this is out of school, but the same subgroup. So looking forward as far as the plan, 3 years ago or 2 years ago when we did in-school suspension, we did a 3-prong approach and it addressed the tier 3, which is the immediate. We have a number of students who are in, over 10 days and we got to do something immediately to support and assist. And what we did 2 years ago, we're going to continue to replicate this, is we had social workers who were trained in Check and Connect. It's a mentoring program, research-based. There were 4 to start, and now I think we have about 28 social workers who are trained in this. But we're going to go back to, we have a list of students that we want to support in that tier 3 and immediately sort of make that connection. It's a 2-year process. So any student that's on there is not like, we'll meet with you and then nothing happens. They meet with them on a weekly basis. And what's really great about Check and Connect as well is then they're developing the relationships with the families. And it's a pretty intense process, but they meet, like I said, on a weekly basis and really create that family network. And so we had some great successes a few years ago with in-school suspension and students maybe who weren't even going to graduate, who were able to get graduated because they're missing maybe one course or they're just something little that's a tough one. Intricacies, right? Where you're trying to then figure out what's missing in this equation. So our social workers really did a fantastic job, and we've expanded that to, like I said, more than the 4 to 28. But then now they're going through the list of students, finding out where the students are, because some actually move from that school to another school. But we want to start in September making those connections with our students. As far as the tier 2 then, so with our 6 schools in support, we want to go back to helping them identify resources. We have resource mapping, we have early warning systems, all of the discipline reports that are in focus, helping to utilize those reports as a means to not have the students get into that tier 3 again, but then, you know, how many students are in this out-of-school suspension? What can we do to problem solve at the table with a problem-solving team at the school before we get back into the CCEIS? So we have 3 split-funded ones, and they're teaming up now to go out to the 6 schools to support them in the problem-solving process. We also have the mental health content specialist who's split-funded, who, if there is a need for mental health to support in that problem-solving, they would also be a part of that. And then we have a teacher trainer who does quality IEPs, who's gonna help with the review of IEPs and accommodations, make sure we're aligning all of those resources, again, available. We have several resources that maybe, you know, assistive technology might not been anything on an IEP, but that's gonna be the game changer. So it's all going through these, you know, problem-solving items to really kind of pinpoint where we might be missing the mark. Also behavior intervention plans, reviewing those. And one of the other items that is in the plan is to go back and look at Lexia as far as supporting students below grade level. So while the 6 schools were all secondary, what we found in the task analysis and understanding is many of our students actually left, maybe not reading on grade level. And so when you get into middle school and high school and you start to see the divide of what you're capable of doing there, there's probably then behaviors are gonna follow suit. So going back and addressing that with some licenses early on to support the below grade level readers will also mitigate that. So this one I wanted to bring up because it is our last year data, and while I put a box around the 21, 22, we can't lose sight of this in the problem solving process, because right now, as of last year, for in-school suspension, more than 10 days, same subgroup. So it could be next year. Well, I just mentioned we are out of school suspension. I think they're going to come back in for in-school suspension as well. So that I say that because when the problem-solving team is working and building capacity within the schools, we don't just focus on one as far as out-of-school suspension. We want to focus on the other, in-school suspension. So the tier 1 comes back to the PBIS specialists and supporting schools if that tier 1 is not, in the infrastructure there. We still have the kindergarten IAs supporting in inclusion in elementary, utilizing all the reports that we have within Focus. There is also another one in Focus for students with disabilities that's created that gives information about our placement, as well as the federal index. And then just good solid professional development for administrators and also for staff throughout the school year on different areas that we think can have a huge impact on decreasing the number of students that we have in our subgroup. Oh, I just thought that was a great quote. Every problem has a solution. It may sometimes just need another perspective. So I know that was a quick overview. I try to be very concise. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I do, but I don't know if Ms. Campbell does or.
I just really more of a statement. I really appreciate the work that you're asking our social workers to do and the work that they're doing for making those connections with the families and really looking into other things like the academics, because so many of that goes along with the behaviors that we see. And you talked about Lexia and being behind in grade level and reading levels. It just makes everything more challenging. And so looking at as a whole, this is one of those areas that when it comes up, there's people in the public who misunderstand this. First of all, that we are required by the state. And the state comes down and says, thou shalt, we have identified this and thou shalt work on this problem because this is not okay. And basically what they're saying is thou shalt put more resources, more time and energy into fixing this problem. But it's not about doing discipline differently based on the color of your skin, just so that you're going to get a lighter sentence. No, we're trying to find solutions so that students don't have the behaviors to begin with, and really trying to support them because, especially with our students with disabilities, it's such a challenging area for people to understand and to meet those IEP goals and all the things that are written into those plans. And so I appreciate the kind of arms around all the things approach that you guys are asking our schools to take, and the training. I love the mentor process, and I'm happy to hear that has expanded over the last year. So thank you very much.
Jean, do you have
Mr.
anything?
Trent?
Okay, I do. So I wanted to discuss this because this is one of those things where you look at these slides and it looks like we're disciplining in a manner that is racist, is what it looks like. I mean, that's what it looks like on paper when we look at this. And I had some questions. So IDEA is federal, correct? That is not state. So the federal government is the one that's making us collect this data. Do we look at other factors such as, are these children in a single family household? Are they living in a foster care situation? Are they in a group home situation? Do we measure all that along with the other data?
So when we did the task analyses, we did not get into the home life, if you will.
Right.
Sometimes you're looking at, what's alterable, what's unalterable, and so what, again, support systems within the school. So that's where the Check and Connect came in so invaluably, because they were making those connections outside and helping families. But it wasn't something as part of like the initial drill down on the root cause analysis
Right.
to understand then what might be causing this. What we did come up with is the huge discrepancy in the students' reading levels. And so again, that's why some of the CEIS is happening, because what can we do? It's access to kindergarten, a 90-minute reading block. What can we do to support you there, so that, as you move through, you have every opportunity, aligning all the resources and making sure our quality IEPs have the right accommodations, assistive technology. So all of that's happening, but really what it came down to for the root cause is that discrepancy. And then students in middle school and high school may be acting in a certain way for a number of reasons to get out of more challenging academics.
Okay, and just to be clear too, having an IEP qualifies, having a 504, does that qualify as well as a student that you'd measure in this category?
IEPs.
Just IEPs, okay. All right, and so, I understand the need of the 15%, meaning, hey, we're gonna allocate 15% additional funds towards this area because it needs additional attention. So I think that's a good thing. What I don't like about this is because we're measuring race, that's it, and nothing else. I'm like, there's a lot of factors that go into, like you said, I mean, even looking at are they able to read on grade level? That's not something that they're asking for here. So to me, I'm like, I don't like this because I'm like, there's many other factors that go into that, and how we support that student. Sometimes those factors are critical. I mean, we have to know those things or else we can't support that student adequately. So when we look at this, part of this is federal, our hands are tied. I get it, like we can't, but I'm like, I would like us to look at the other factors, because it's not just their skin color. That is not what is making someone have a higher ratio there. It's other factors, and if we can look at what those are, and I know we can't change them always, but maybe we can find ways to come alongside to support them in a way that helps, so that we can get to the bottom of this and make sure ultimately, you want to see this at below 0. I mean, I want to see it at 0, but that won't happen. That's a perfect world. So yeah, but thank you for the information, and thank you for the slides that give us the data that is not very becoming of us. So, but yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Campbell, you already went, right? And you didn't have anything? Mr. Trent, you're good? Yeah, and we do have that data, correct? So we do have some of the data points that Ms. Wright had spoken to.
As far as the home life and things like that, I think that's coming through and what the weekly monitoring is with our school social workers. So they definitely are making connections with our students to be able to then figure out how to assist along the way. There's probably some data points that with focus or something along those lines, but if we looked into that wasn't like the primary data point we were using in the creation. We knew there was a concern, and so it's going back and trying to figure out again within the school system what we can do to help alleviate and support our students that seem to be having some difficult struggles here.
And I think to Ms. Wright's comments, I think some of those items are evaluated and then taken into consideration. It's just like when we had students, when we taught, I'm sure when you spoke to, when you taught students, when you knew all of the aspects of their life, you were able to create that relationship with them, and then they would talk to you, and then you could help them based on some of those other factors. One of the problems that there's another level is not only identifying those, because then we could help them support in those areas beyond it. So you're like, here's an identifying factor that we have students that are of a certain race that are acting out in a certain way. Okay, that's one. And then we put this in place. But the reason behind that could be they're not getting fed, right? So you have a way of finding that you can do the Children's Hunger Project. Then you have families that may come from a broken home where grandmother's taking care of them. Well, let's get them a mentor through the Rotary and all of those things. Like, I think what you're saying has a lot of validity and a lot of backup supports. And I think that it's being done in a way like with our guidance counselors and our mental health counselors and stuff like that. But it would be nice to know some of those data points to also assist with it, because I think when they come in and they say, well, these children are of this, you're having issues here with this, this, and this. Well, it doesn't really, race is not the only factor that makes those happen, and we know that, right? So, so what I was asking is the goal of the data, the reason that they're coming out with the data saying that African Americans are at a higher rate and white people are not, and Hispanic are, or whatever those components are, the reason that they're showing that data is to say that what's the fear behind that data? Like, what is it that they're asking us? Does that make sense to you?
I don't think I understood the question. Are you, from the state perspective, what
Yeah,
they're
from the state's
monitoring?
perspective, when they ask us about risk ratio, when they ask us about all of that, their fear is that those students are acting out because of a specific reason behind it, right? And they're asking us to fix that reason. Does that make sense? Go ahead. I'm getting there. I just don't know how the hell to say it.
They're worried about, like we said, that they're being disciplined 3 times more than another race. Also, as a part of our problem solving is our MTSS process, where we do look at those students and a group with our school counselors, our administration, looking at attendance, academics, behavior. So it's not just one factor. So those kids who are on that list, yes, they've been identified, but then we're going to problem solve, and they're going to be noted at the school. We need to do some interventions, provide some more supports in place, which we've identified, but we'll be monitoring those students along the way and providing those supports. Like you said, homelessness, if it's identified that they're homeless, we'll make sure that our SIT personnel are at that school and providing that support. If there's attendance is an issue, what interventions are we going to put in place for attendance? So it's looking at the whole child, not just that one piece. However, we have been identified, but then we problem solve what interventions can we put in place to make sure that those students are successful that are on the list. And that's why we're giving 15% more of those resources to that, to try to fix the problem.
So there's.
There we go.
It's easy
No,
to
I'm
look at
gonna
this
get
and go,
involved.
okay, somebody could take this data and say, okay, Brevard, I think you were saying that the perspective is that
Oh.
Brevard is a racist school district and whatever.
Right.
I think that's
It'll be
not
on
the
the
point
internet.
of this data or the presentation, or the point is, these students are going to need some more supports. And we didn't have them in place before enough to try to get that, but the goal is not 0, the goal is 1.
Yes.
Right, the goal is 1.
Correct. One is because it's
Right.
1-to-1.
That's where everybody is
Right.
just as likely to have be disciplined as everybody else.
Yes.
Correct.
But we're obviously these are going to. So that is where you're getting at. That is what the goal of this is: to get more supports for the students who need more supports, to try to help them be successful, to have good attendance, to get those reading levels up, so that all of that hopefully will result in fewer discipline actions. So behaviors. And then it's not, we don't want our principals and our schools to do things that are going to manipulate the numbers
Correct.
so that we can get our numbers nice and under 3. That is absolutely what we don't want to do.
You don't want
But we also don't want to go out and go, everybody examine yourselves because you're doing this in a biased way. I'm not saying there would never be that way. There can be that way. But we have identified students that need more support, and we're going to try to wrap around them and that's with the social workers. So it's not just the deans and the assistant principals, it's the social workers, it's the teachers, everybody coming around and trying to support them as much as we can so they can be successful.
And just real fast, just to hit on what you kind of mentioned it, and I've heard this from multiple teachers, is that a lot of times when discipline is looking, they're looking at writing a referral, that this comes into play. And they're like, oh, nope, wait, can't do that because we're already over our numbers. And I'm like, whoa, what does that mean when you say you're over your numbers? And so, again, I think you have to look at the whole picture because we can't just solve it based on one factor. I wish that the federal government would look at the whole picture and not just this one factor, because it would be very nice to say, hey, maybe it's disproportionate here because of X, Y, Z, and we're coming around and helping them, and we could actually solve this problem. But when you have a survey that's literally just measuring one factor and saying, hey, this one factor is disproportionate to the other factors, well, there's also other things that go into that. So that's why, I mean, this is not your fault at all. This is just the survey, the nature of this survey. So, and again, the ultimate goal is to make sure that we actually are helping these students. So a lot of times there's so many factors that go here. So thank you for the clarification. Sorry, I didn't want to get on my soapbox about this, but I just want to make sure that it's not painted in a way in the community that says, hey, like, this is what's going on there. No. This is the data. I mean, this is what it is, but there's also other factors that go into this. So, and we're going to help these students, so.
And so I was getting into, first off, the factors, right? But the second component is that do we do this per school? And then do we do this per percentage of people that are in there? So the 3 is a percentage, or is that a number of referrals per 100? Like, what is that? 3, 2,
It's the
1?
likelihood of that group being suspended more than other groups.
Okay, so
Right,
and
3
where does
times
that
higher.
number come from? Total referrals, correct?
No, 10-day suspension.
10-day suspensions, the things you did,
Right.
okay? And when we do the 3 times as much, are we comparing district-wide or are we comparing by school? Right? Does that
The
make sense to you?
district-wide number.
Which
But
is
we
completely
can
different.
boil it down to each school.
Right.
We do that.
You do.
Oh,
Break
yeah,
it
we
down
look at,
by
oh, yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
those are all things from
Principals are
Yep.
held.
a much bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah, the idea would be have one, all ones. So theoretically, no one group is
Right.
more likely to be suspended any more than any other group.
I think what I'm going to do is dive into the components and the whys and all that other stuff to learn, right? Like not to make any feedback or anything, but I want to wrap my head around this because you're right. Like there's a lot of, because we all were teachers, right? And I think that, I'm sorry, but in order to understand a student, you have to understand everything about them, right? And it would help us when we're giving direction on strategic plans and stuff like that if we knew, and working in the community, what some of those components are missing, right? So if we know that there's a huge need for, you know what I mean, mentors, and we go out and we get as many people that can help students, you know what I mean? Like we can do that. And I think that's where we're missing when we see that one file is that like, okay, here's a number. Well, it just tells us that there's this, but let's us work to help and support. That's all. So the other thing,
All right.
yeah,
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
now that,
Yeah.
now that we're talking about this. Yes, now I'm talking about it. Well, you mentioned teacher, and it would be, as a teacher, not that slide, the slide with the races on it, as a teacher means absolutely nothing. As a coach, it means absolutely nothing. I would love to see some of these numbers on the likelihoods when they're at grade level reading, one grade below reading level, 2 grade belows, and see where that is,
Yeah.
because I truly believe that's going to paint the picture. And as an educator, that's where we can support the child, or the student in the classroom. I would love to see these subcategories because, like it or not, this is going to be used against any organization for an agenda that doesn't benefit the student. So I would have a hard time, except I was trying not to say anything, but I would try to not have this slide where it just breaks it down like the federal government wants us to do without showing, yes, this is the big picture because it's what we, but this is what's more important. And this is where we feel we can, it's low-hanging fruit. We got to get the kids to read at an early level. I don't care what they look like when they come in. They need to read. I really, truly believe, and I could be wrong if we see this statistic, the data, if it backs up, but I'm going to say that's where we're going to find the root causes. And I think for Brevard, we need to make that known to say, we know why this is happening. And, you know, we're doing about everything we possibly can, and we'll have it there. But it's bigger than the story that some are going to run with. And, you know, we take that personally. So, and it really, it goes against why we're all here, and that you guys put in the hours and the efforts, and it's wrong, but it's going to happen. So I would like to see if we could come out with other data as well.
Except I would say, whether we like it or not, whether it be used incorrectly or not, this is our data. It's our students, and we have to own it.
Yeah, and there's more data also
Right.
to
And-
fully
and-
paint the picture.
And it doesn't mean we're not doing, you know, we're going to do everything we can. Just like, I'm glad, thank you for sharing. I mean, obviously, it looks like next year we're going to be on the list for this other thing, but thank you for sharing the data for the progress we seem to have made in the out-of-school suspension, because it looks like at least maybe we can roll off or whatever, and not that we don't continue to support. Because honestly, you're going to put the same structures in place, right? It may be a different group of schools, but we're going to put the same structures in place to support those students. So,
Correct.
but this is our data, like it or not, and whether it's the state or the federal government, doesn't matter. It's these are our students, and this identifies for us where we need a little extra TLC. So we may not like what kind of picture it gets painted, or how people might use
Well,
the
because it's
picture.
false.
But these are our students, and nobody made up this data. It is what it is. So I don't know, what did Nada always say? Data is just data, right? And we have to use it. I'm going to totally mess up her quote. Sorry, Nada. But you know, what we do with it is what's most important. And it sounds like you guys have got some excellent
Well,
structures in place.
All I was saying, Ms. Kimball, with that is that an accurate diagnosis of the problem is what will help us find the solution.
Thank you.
So that is really, and this is one part of it, but there are more parts that go to it, so.
And I think that as long as we put the why behind it, then we're able to address it as a board and strategically set in, you know what I mean, some of the positives. Moving a little bit forward on some of my other questions is, I'm so glad that when I start bringing stuff up, you guys pop back in. Because no, I'm okay with it. And I want that, because I think that that's part of it. The other thing is that we have these registered behavioral techs. And it's been kind of in some of our schools, it's been a positive and a negative. In some schools, the registered behavioral techs that come in and work with some of our students in those areas that are in need have found very big barriers by our principals in coming in. So there's some of our registered behavioral tech organizations have expressed an extreme need for many of our students and would like to expand their programs. And just so everybody understands, these are some of the techs that come in and work with our students with disabilities and some of the other components that are inside of our classrooms that help assist the teacher who may not know and who may not be able to deal with that. So we have a student who comes in, and if I do a bad job here, please cut me off, but a student who has disabilities that's inside of a classroom, the behavioral tech will come in and work with them, and it's 100% funded by Medicaid. And so it's not on our school district at all. They come in and they work with the student, and in many cases they have very good results. Now, one of the problems that we ran into is that some of the behavioral techs were not very good in some instances, so they had some bad experiences with the principals. But then there are some that are doing very good jobs. So I didn't know where we are with the behavioral techs. Are we open to expanding that and everything else? And questions on that?
So there is a process for outside providers that they go through, and it goes through Student Services Now and Risk Management. And so if they meet all the things within that outside portal, then it goes to the principal, and the principal then will decide, or it could be in reverse, so this one is new to my department. But the principal then decides the schedule that will work. So it's not necessarily for the outside provider, I want to come every day. It's based on what then the school needs, the principal decides, and then they put that schedule in place. So it just depends on where the needs are for the student, and then the principal can have the autonomy to decide what that would look like for their school.
And at what point, say there's an instance where there's principals that just don't like the behavioral techs, and I'm not saying this is happening, and the behavioral techs come in and they say, we have an opportunity, and in many cases, they're actually working with them after school already. We have an opportunity to work with the student inside the classrooms and help out with the teachers. Who's overseeing like that decision by the principals on whether they should or shouldn't be in there? Is there parental input? The whole component right there. That's where we ran into some issues over the last couple of years that I saw.
Yeah,
How does that, walk me through that process?
My understanding is the principal has the decision as the school-based, leader in that final decision. So if it's not working out on the campus, then the principal can decide. So they go through the process to get vetted, if you will, and then approved to come in, but then they decide, the principal will, at the
So
school-based, and what
If a
schedule that
teacher
looks like.
requests a behavioral tech, the student's parents are requesting the behavioral tech, and the principal says no.
So
What
I
do
think
you
we
do
might
then?
be talking about two different things, because you've got the outside providers.
Yep.
But then we also have some behavior techs that are also funded through IDA.
Mm-hmm.
But the outside providers, the parents are going through whatever
Mm-hmm.
means to say, hey, I want, so-and-so to come into the school. They fill out that information, it goes through the portal.
Yep.
And then the principal decides, yes, you can come at this point in time, but
Mm-hmm.
this is not a good time. Maybe the student has another, related
Absolutely.
service at that time, so they really have to decide what's going to be most appropriate. So if it's an outside provider that's solely going through the principal and the parent, I have a behavior tech, they work with me at home. I think it'll really help to make that connection between home and school, and they do that on that side. We do have some also that are funded, right, school-based, and they also go out and support in some of our feeder classrooms and things that need additional support there.
And in some instances where the principal says no, but you have a teacher and a parent saying that this is needed, and the teacher's saying, hey, the student has some severe behavioral problems inside my classroom, I need help, and the principal blocks, who's responsible to make that decision that may be part of an appeals process or something? Because that's what I was dealing with. I had multiples that were happening last year, wasn't even in my part of the district, but I started getting parents that were emailing me and stuff like that. Who oversees that from your department that I can just direct them to when they come?
Well, it's going to end up being the area director.
Okay.
That's who would probably step in and marshal the resources.
Okay. So all right. And that's an area director from,
Chief of schools.
okay, chief of schools. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you had internal area directors internally inside your department or, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I was making it up.
So,
But if it's an IDA, if we're paying for it and those resources, of course,
Right.
we would be a part of that because we'd want to know if those, because it's based on the IEP and it's based on the needs of that particular school.
what I'll do is I'll show you the information. You can see what I'm talking about. You can make the judgments based on it. So that way in the future, if we ever have that problem again, we know how to deal with it. And there are providers out there that are saying that they would love to do more work with our school district, but the issue that they're running into is that there's some blocks in there. And I think that if we did a better job in there, we might be able to. So that was all on that one. Let me make sure I got all of this. So following up, following up, so we had requested that we wanted to try to take a look at some of this stuff. Are you making a formal request that says, hey, when we deal with this, we would like, because it's in there, you guys have that. Would you like to see that?
I would love to see other categories that go in there.
Yeah, we'll be able to bring back some other data and maybe cross-reference, do some data analysis, some comparisons to see what other factors might be contributing to a certain group being.
I'm sure they already have
higher.
identified them. I'm sure they already know what they are, basically. I mean, I know. when
I think our community would love to see that.
Yeah, I don't know that we've run the charts and tables based on all those different factors, so we'll do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Attendance.
Can you guys meet with them to set those so that they're not out in blind? Can you tell them, like send them an email saying we would like to look at attendance?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure they have everything we're
Okay.
asking for. It's just not out, but to make it more readily
Okay.
available.
All right, just want to make sure we get follow-up there.
Thank you. We appreciate
All right. With that, I wanted to thank you guys. Thank you so much for all your work and due
Yes.
diligence. We really appreciate you guys and your department. Thank you. All right. Next topic is presentation is on recruitment and retention by Ryan Dufresne.
Ryan
And
has
Mike Alba.
changed.
Sorry, you got me.
It's actually going to be Mike Alba.
Today, Ryan Dufresne is being played by.
Hey, listen, I just read what's on the script just in case I'm saying the wrong thing.
He delegated.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm not sure if it's an advantage to go last or not. We'll find out, I guess. But appreciate Dr. Mendel and members of the board for providing me this opportunity to update the board on recruitment activities from this last spring, over the summer, and what we've got planned coming up the rest of the school year. Before I really delve into just specific recruitment activities, I felt it was important just to go provide you with some data. Just because I'm not sure what kind of data you've seen in the past, but data tells a whole story. We've talked about that through several presentations already today. So this first slide, what this is showing you is on the left-hand side is the survey that principals fill out at the beginning of each year. You may have seen, I think the Florida DOE sent out a press release after they were comparing results across the state here. I think they did it last week or the previous week. But we do have to report this data to the state along with every other district. So I compared the last several years of instructional vacancies that principals reported. But then what I thought would be interesting to look at was also comparing the previous year's resignations and to see what the correlation is with the increased number of classroom vacancies that principals reported, and then looking at the year prior to, let's look at how many instructional staff resigned and see if there's a correlation. So as you can see, in school year 22, we had 83 classroom vacancies on day one, and then the year prior we had 268 instructional resignations. And then you can see in last year, school year 23, had a large increase in number of vacancies first day. But then you can kind of see on the right-hand side, well, we had definitely an increase to 406 instructional resignations the year prior. And then this past school year, principals just completed this, so we had 147 classroom vacancies. Certainly, we wish this number would be a lot lower, based on the needs of the schools. Is a little bit lower than the previous school year. But as you can see the number of resignations between last year. We had 526, so it's 121 additional resignations compared to the year prior. So just wanted to throw that out there as far as data. The vacancies is just a one data element, right? Everything is kind of linked together. So I just wanted to kind of provide that picture moving forward with this first day counts. Just number of new teachers hired, right? I think that would be a thing that's considered. How many teachers are we hiring each and every school year? So again, went back 3 years. So back in school year 21, we hired about 454. And really, anything prior to COVID, we would hire around that much. About 400 teachers a year is what we traditionally would see with number of teachers that needed to be hired. And then you can see we went up to 603 and 677 last school year as far as new teachers hired. This school year, in case you're curious, we're hired 481 so far this school year, new teachers for school year 24. Again, these numbers for the 21, 22, and 23, that represents new hires for the entire school year. It wasn't just, that's who we hired first day. So to have 481 right now in the middle of August, we'll probably match for sure the school year 22 or 23 totals by the time we get through the school year and hire teachers in and out during the school year. And then I just thought it would be the number of temporary certification teachers. Again, if you're on a temporary certification, that means you were hired without maybe going through a college of education program. And that means you probably didn't have an internship experience. So as you can see, our numbers of teachers that are hired on a temp cert have definitely increased. So what that means for our schools and really our district as we think about how we're supporting our new teachers is, kind of looking at both of them, right? Because, if you're new, even if you have experience, those new teachers kind of need support, right, from someone at their school. But those individuals also, a lot of our new teachers are coming in on a temporary teaching certificate, which is wonderful, right? They're bringing in lots of experience. Usually either it's a second career or third career, and they've always, thought about being a teacher in the past, and now they decided to go for it, right? So they're in our schools. They did what they needed to do, but they need specific supports. They need additional supports than maybe we provided teachers 5 years ago, just because our staffing is different. So I just wanted to paint that picture too, that yes, we are hiring more and more teachers, but those teachers need different supports that maybe they needed 5 years ago, just based on how many are coming in on a temporary certification. And then this is kind of a total, I didn't want to just throw instructional, so this is kind of total count of new positions for both instructional and support over the last 6 years. So you can kind of see how we're doing there as far as new hires. So, I think, all we hear about is, we have all these vacancies, we have all these vacancies, we have all these vacancies. So I think the danger in that is that the perception could be, well, we're not hiring enough people to fill the slots. And as you can see from the data, it's actually not the case, right? We're actually hiring more people than we ever have hired in the past, but we still have vacancies. So, here's the big picture, right? We all want what's in the middle there. That's our goal. We want to be fully staffed, right? Both instructional and support. But as you can see from the data, we're not going to be able to get to be fully staffed by just focusing on the left-hand side, right? And, recruitment is absolutely an important piece, and we own that. But I don't want to get into this presentation any further with this message being lost, is that it really is, it's tied together, right? To be fully staffed, you really need a strong recruitment plan, but you also need strong retention in order to achieve our goals, right? We're not being able to keep up with the amount of people resigning than we are to be able to hire them. So thank you for listening to my soapbox on that one. So let's get to the work. So I wanted to share, as we think about, we'll start off with some teacher recruitment activities. As you think about when you're trying to staff for the next school year coming up, you're going to start that work in the spring prior. So here are some typical fairs that we have put on through the district. We start off in kind of the end of March with the BPS Priority School Fair. What does it mean to be priority school? We want to provide our school principals who are in our Tier 2 or Tier 3 schools the first opportunity to connect and interview applicants, because traditionally those Tier 2 and Tier 3 schools have a more challenging time filling their staff. So we kept on hearing from the principals, well, what makes us a priority? You tell us that we're a priority school, but what makes us a priority? So this is one of the things, at least through our department, that we can provide them, is we'll give them first shot as far as establishing those connections with our applicants that are looking to fill positions for the upcoming school year. And then we follow that up with our big event, which is our school-wide district fair, and that usually happens around the April timeframe. And all principals are able to attend that fair. It's a virtual fair. We used to, of course, it used to be in person. And then after COVID, we learned some new tricks with recruitment. And I think it was last year or the year before, we actually decided, well, let's try to do a hybrid. We'll have some people come in person, and then we'll have some opportunities for maybe out-of-state people to do a virtual option, so don't lose those applicants. And then we started polling the applicants, and the vast majority said they'd rather just do a virtual interview. It's just easier, more convenient for them. So instead of pulling principals out of their building to only talk to a handful of people, or pulling out somewhere just to talk to someone on a computer, we've really just decided to continue with just a full virtual teacher fair. We use a platform called Career Fair Plus. It's an opportunity for each principal to kind of have their own virtual booth So when they're connecting with candidates, they have their own little virtual platform. They video conference with them, able to ask them questions. They can each principal can kind of upload information about their school. Here's our priority needs. So we've gotten great feedback on that platform from both the candidates and the principals. They both enjoy using it. We've been using the platform for about two or 3 years, so the principals are very comfortable using the platform, because they've used it for several years. So just making you aware of kind of that virtual fair and how that works.
Mike, can you explain what bindered means to
Yes,
the public?
well, thank you. So, in that springtime, we still have to. It's kind of a tricky point within the teacher contract, right? We still have, at that time, our current teachers, right, the teachers that have been working with us all year, have the opportunity to have that transfer period, right, where they can apply to openings at other schools before outside people can be hired into those positions. That's built into our contract. That's something, kind of a privilege for our current teachers. So having a principal provide a binder then provides assurance to that teacher that they're interviewing. It's like, hey, I'm really interested in you. I really, I have an opening. I really want you to be here. I'm not able to open up that job ad to the public just yet. They're not able to do that until May, because that's when the transfer period is over. So that binder really just provides that assurance to that the candidate that, you were promised a job. And, if there are any advantages of having a lot of openings, is that the one advantage is that there's typically not teachers on overage or somewhere, a teacher that needs to be placed in a school, so that that principal can say, I'm almost 99% sure that if I give you the binder, I'm going to be able to hire you to my school, because there's probably not going to be a teacher on overage in your subject area. So that's what a binder is for. It really is just to hopefully provide that assurance to that applicant, and that they won't be looking at other districts for jobs during that time when every other district is hiring and doing fairs. That's our goal, right? We've got in a binder, they've got a job, so they're like, oof, and then they'll just stop looking. So that's the idea for
Thank
the
you.
binder.
So worst case scenario for them in that situation is their job might be at another school.
Correct. And that's what we tell them. And we tell the principals, give that little caveat, just in that 1%, chance that a teacher might have to be placed in that position, and the principal doesn't have another open position for their certification area. They could be then placed in another school. Either way, we'll give them a job, right? We've got 147 of them still open, so we'll find a place for them. That is not a concern. Any other questions on those?
No, thank
All right, the Great Florida Teach-In, if you're not aware of that is the fair that is sponsored by the Florida Department of Education. So that is a statewide fair that they promote, they market, and I can tell you it's just been a challenge. The last several years, you can see by the number of people that we connected with, it's just been, a lot of it, most districts still go to that just because it's the state-sponsored fair, but we can see that it's just been difficult to connect. And I just feel like, everyone knows that there's every district is hiring. They're hiring lots of teachers, so they're probably just saying, I don't need to go to this. I'll just go interview directly with the districts and those principals for those positions. And then we held another virtual fair on June 7th to attract people. And then just to kind of, in the bottom left corner, I get this question. It's probably the most frequent question that I get is, hey, don't we go to just visit colleges? Don't we visit other colleges and go to their recruitment fairs? And we do. We still do that. So I just picked 6 that we went to in the spring, this past spring. We did connect with 41 people, so not bad to be able to connect with that many individuals. But you can see that, out of those 41, we actually only end up hiring 1 of those individuals. So that's kind of my hesitation when people say, we should just be out on the road, traveling and all that. It's we haven't seen that return on investment. And when I talk to other districts, we're all in the same boat. A lot of districts have cut back on that kind of travel, just because we have, we're able to leverage more of the virtual platforms and maybe some more, use the money for maybe digital, social media marketing, different things to be able to attract candidates to the area. So just wanted to share just some numbers there. the next slide is, we're not just focused on instructional openings. We wouldn't be hiring someone if it wasn't important for that school or that district to function. So we do certainly support and participate in different fairs to attract support staff into our district. You see, we've got a combination of ones that either we held as a recruitment team, or we also partner with CareerSource as well. They've been an incredible partner with us to be able to market different recruitment activities, throughout the year. For when we have our own fairs, we have individuals from food and nutrition, before and after care. ESOL department comes as well. Educational technology, transportation, facility and maintenance, and adult education are typically the individuals or departments that kind of show up. That way, again, the goal for any of these fairs is to start establishing connections and relationships with people. So that way they'll actually take the time necessary to complete that Beacon application. I also want to emphasize that, especially in the support fairs, we were finding that a lot of our applicants, they were just having a hard time completing the Beacon application. I don't know if you had to complete the Beacon application anytime soon, but it's not fun. And so what we do in our fairs, we have laptops set up. So, that's one thing that we encourage them to do. They get to connect with people in different departments, hopefully get excited about an opportunity, and then we have them sit down with one of our employment specialists in HR, and they help them just step by step. Let's complete this application, because what we don't want to happen is they go home, they start filling out the application, get frustrated, and then they just stop the process. So we want to try to eliminate as many barriers as possible by providing that support. We also ensure that we have Spanish speakers at our career fairs, and we've worked with the ESOL department too, sometimes to, depending on the area that we're at, to have someone that speaks Haitian Creole as well. So we try to provide support wherever possible. We'll try to identify those barriers.
I have another question.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump in there.
Yeah, no worries.
Our conversion ratio is pretty low here on how
Yes.
many applicants versus hires. Is that just because they're not qualified for the position they're hiring for, or what is the reason on why?
It could be lots of different reasons, right? They
Okay.
either come and, like I said, maybe they don't fill out the Beacon application and they don't get that far in the process, or maybe they're not qualified for the position.
Okay.
There could be
Or at the
lots.
CareerSource ones, it's because it could be they're applying to multiple employers and they pick somebody else.
Yeah, it's
So
just,
we have to compete.
I'm like, I would love to see it. I know 50% is
Yeah.
probably unrealistic, but we're below 20 right now,
Sure.
so.
And I have to say, just with the data, I'll just say it out, all this data that you'll see, from the previous slides to these slides, I mean, it is a manual process just based on our current systems that we have.
Okay.
Beacon is not the easiest applicant tracking system. Probably it's hard to even call it that, compared to other things that are out there.
Yeah.
So it is incredibly difficult to get any kind of quick, meaningful data, and then to track that data, to monitor that data as you go on is difficult, right? Because everyone's super busy, right? Whether it's educational technology or people in HR, they have to stop what they're doing and redo these reports and start literally manually, computating these numbers. So
Hopefully we'll see that change soon.
I hope so. Yes. Any other questions while we're going? All right, and so these are additional fairs that we tried throughout the summer. Again, we always track numbers, so we say, hey, we need to get out there. So these, instead of having them always come to here at ESF, we wanted to take the show on the road. So we do that a lot of times. We go to different places, and we try and see what happens. So it was interesting this summer. You see the first one that we did on June 28th. It was the week right before July 4th break.
Yeah.
For us, we want to fill as many positions as we can during the summer, but it seemed to be that people maybe who wants to work at the district, certainly a support staff, maybe it's too early in the summer for them to come out. I mean, there was hardly anybody. There was no interest in that fair. And then you look compared to our most successful fair was what we did just last week, and it was here at ESF, and we had 126 people come and apply. It only says one hired. It's still too early. We're still tracking
good.
that. Yeah, the only reason
like,
it has the one hired, I just put it in there just because I know food service was bragging that we hired the first one out of the 126, so
Okay.
that person's already started. So we are still tracking the 126. It just, it's too early in the process.
I
Yes,
know, I
yes.
saw that.
There will definitely be more coming, but we were certainly very pleased with the turnout. So it's just, again, all these fairs were advertised and marketed the same exact way. GCR is a huge partner in getting the word out, and that might be another thing why the August 17th fair was more successful. Is Mr. Bruin and his department, he sends out the focus email saying to everybody that we have, a lot of recruitment is word of mouth. That's typically the highest return on investment is word of mouth. And he sends it out. So perhaps people just weren't looking at their focus emails because school hasn't started. So I don't know, but they came, right? And it was funny. The other fairs we held from 3 to 5, just thinking, well, if people are working, we'll give them opportunities to come. The one on the 17th, that was from 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning. So, we keep trying to see, are we having our own barriers? What is stopping people from coming to our fairs? And we've tried different things, you see different businesses around the county where they'll have like open interview days. Hey, Tuesdays are open interview. So we tried that at some schools to see how that worked. Some of the schools said it was fine. They had dedicated like 2 hours of their time just to have it. They said the school principals that we connected to afterward, they said, they were connecting to some people. They were able to hire a few support staff based on those open interview days. Again, we try a little bit of everything. I think what we find is there's really no silver bullet. There's no magic solution. There's no huge pot of people that we haven't connected with. It really is just kind of the daily grind of, you get a few people here, you get a few people through this initiative, and just over the course of the year, you end up, filling some positions. Some upcoming career fairs, just so you know, the work doesn't stop just because the summer's over, right? Our recruiters are still super busy. So these are upcoming career fairs that we have in the fall. You'll see that we also we try to participate in even community events. And you can see the Puerto Rican Day Parade. We've always had a table there, again, just to connect with people and to ensure that they understand that we are hiring. We've got positions for all sorts of individuals. We also attended the Indian Kite Festival. We attended the Divine Nine Day at Eastern Florida State College. So we try to not just go to just recruiting fairs. We try to do community events too, just to get the word out. We have some informational nights. The steps to certification there is we have a link, and this has actually been a successful event as far as just trying to inform people. A lot of people, I guess they have that perception that if you want to become a teacher, then you have to go back to school to get a teaching degree, and that's not the case. If you have a bachelor's degree or higher, and you're interested in teaching, there's a pathway for you, right? So that's exactly what these meetings are for. So we hold them monthly. We have a link on our career page that says interested in teaching, and they click on that, and then they connect with our recruiters, and they invite them to this meeting, and they'll show them the pathways, right? They can either get a temporary certificate just based on their major and their coursework they took, or they have to take a subject area exam. If they do those two things, they become certified to teach, and we will help them through that process. So again, it's just breaking down those perceptions, those misunderstandings of being a teacher, and sometimes people feel like there's a barrier that's really not there. So we try to ensure that we connect with them and making sure they understand the process. So again, we're still, even though you saw the numbers in a couple of slides ago, we're still going to go and visit some colleges. So these are the colleges that have some career fairs that are in the fall. So those are just a list of colleges that we are going to visit. And certainly also utilize Handshake and then the college career centers too to promote and advertise our openings and our career fairs as well. And that reaches out to hundreds of universities throughout the school year. Just the normal job board platforms have been really a big benefit. So when we started advertising more on Indeed and Circa, LinkedIn, again, we've seen more success for support ads or for support openings for these job sites, but we've had some traction with teachers as well. But feedback we get from principals is that they seem to get more applicants through Indeed. Because again, somebody might not be actively looking for Brevard Public Schools in Beacon. We want to expand our reach, and ensure that people know of our openings. And again, it's not just teachers that we need lots of different individuals. So Indeed and these different platforms, again, just helps enhance their awareness of the kinds of openings we need. And again, just kind of looking at the numbers, those 50 ads that you see on Indeed, 112, and the 50 on Circa, these all have to be manually entered by our recruiters. So it's a lot of work to get these in here, but they'll do it because they feel it's important, right? There's nothing automated. The only thing, the one that's automated is the EdWeek one that you have on the bottom right. That is able to read our ads on Beacon. The only challenge to that is that if you go on there on EdWeek, you'll start seeing that there's like coaching openings and things like that, just because it's just picking up anything that's on Beacon. It's not just picking up the job ads that we would hopefully want to advertise on EdWeek, but at least one thing we don't have to do manually. Some other efforts that you may not be aware of that our recruiters do is they look at Beacon accounts. We talked about individuals that maybe start their Beacon accounts but don't finish. So this is actually it does pay off. It's work, but it does pay off based on what our recruiters do. So they'll start off with people that have incomplete Beacon accounts. And then just call them up and reach out to them or email them. Say, hey, you started this account. What can we do to help? Did you experience any problems? So it kind of helps eliminate some of those barriers. And then we also actively reach out to individuals who have a Beacon account, but we see that they haven't applied for any specific jobs. And we just reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you haven't applied for jobs. There's an opening here that's specific to your qualifications. So that has paid off. We try to leverage who we have already, right? Substitutes, or we have a lot of substitutes. We have like 700 or 800 substitutes within our system. How many of those have bachelor's degrees where those individuals like to become teachers? So we reach out to them and see, we invite them to our certification evenings as well to help them understand how they become certified. The state of Florida gives us email addresses for those that recently have applied to the DOE for a teaching certificate. We reach out to those individuals every single day, right, through constant contact, so that way people understand what our openings are. We give them information about our district. We give them information about the millage, right, and what an advantage is to work in Brevard now that we have that millage. We send postcards to BPS teachers. We reach out to Eastern Florida State graduates that have an AA and a bachelor's degree. We network with other districts. We have a Skill Bridge program, if you're not aware for that. Those are individuals who are still active military, but when they're in their last year of service. They can do a paid internship through the Department of Defense. If they want to become a teacher, then they can intern in one of our schools, just like our College of Education students are, and they'll actually get paid to do it through the Department of Defense. So we have individuals take part in that. We have connections with the Space Force to try to get those individuals that maybe are transitioning out, or maybe their spouses. And again, GCR is a huge supporter of trying to help market our career fairs and so forth. I know Russ has secured some ESSER funding, and he's going to have some, he's going to run some billboards. He's going to do some marketing, maybe TV, radio, whatever he could use the funds to help market our October teacher fair for this upcoming school year. Social media is, again, one thing that we try to leverage a lot. So again, we leverage the openings that priority schools have and just get the information out, so increase that word of mouth. We also do paid ads through either Facebook or Instagram, just again to expand the reach of our ads, to again just get that as much as we can out there. Again, we not only post just positions, but we try to communicate just the culture of BPS. I think that's important, right? People aren't just applying to a job; they're saying they want to be part of our culture. So we try to also showcase some fun things that happen. So if you are not following our recruitment on our social media ads, I welcome you to take part of it, especially Instagram and Facebook. It's different from the general BPS one. We have a recruitment specific one, a career specific one, and you can kind of see some of the neat videos and marketing that they do for that. Again, we really tried to market the millage and leverage that. And there's our friend Russ Brune there on the right-hand side. If you don't recognize him, that was at the middle school conference, just welcoming and do our middle school teachers as they came in. He was a trooper. It was like 5,000 degrees that morning, and he's wearing a jacket and all that kind of fun stuff, but he did a great job, and him and his team. One thing I do want to highlight is our Grow Your Own program, as we try to encourage our current employees. And a lot of districts are doing this because they see that it's such a challenge to try to recruit new people. We know that the individuals that are going to College of Education programs, there are just fewer and fewer people seeking that degree. So who do we have? Who do we have that is interested in being in the classroom? Well, those are our very own IAs. So we try to create programs to help inform them of how to become a teacher. So we reach out to those. We directly connect with those that already have an AA degree. We have a good number of IAs that already have a bachelor's. We even have some that have master's degrees. So in connecting with them and giving them, here's the pathway. Here's the pathway to become teachers. And we have Zoom meetings. We send them the recordings for those that cannot come. And then we also have worked really closely with UCF and our university partners, right? We don't want to direct them to a program and then they find out it doesn't work for them, right? Because we're working adults, right? They're not college kids. So UCF has been wonderful in creating specific cohorts for our support staff so that they can take classes in the evening, or they'll take classes maybe on every other Saturday, things like that, so that they can continue with their degree and not affect their work. We've also ensured that a lot of people probably have their perception is like, well, I just can't afford to go back to school. We push really hard for our students to complete the FAFSA and open up for those opportunities where our adults also have the same opportunities. There's no age limit for FAFSA applications in college. So a lot of our IAs probably would qualify for Pell Grants that they wouldn't have to pay back. Cool. So just giving them that opportunity to know that those chances are there. And I also presented at the IA Super Saturday where we had over 100 IAs, just making sure they're aware of the different opportunities. And lastly, we support them all the way through the process, right? To say if they need help maybe studying for the general knowledge test or subject area test to get certified, we have study platforms available to them. Either 240 Tutoring is one of those platforms we use. If they did pass the subject area exam and paid to add, for their teaching certificate, we use Title II funds to reimburse them, right? So say, hey, great job, and here's your money back for taking the test and applying to the DOE. So we try to make it as easy as possible, and it's the last number there, what's the payoff? Well, we've had 70 IAs become teachers the last 2 years. So it's a good number. So if you're curious, I know I've talked a lot about IAs, but there's actually been other support staff that have become teachers as well. Wow. So you can kind of see the total number of our either instructional assistants along with the support staff that have become teachers. So, last year was our highest at 60, so we're very proud of them, very proud of that fact of that number. But again, it makes sense, right? These are people that are already invested in the community. They live here, their family's here. We don't have to convince them to move here. They're already here. So why not leverage the people that we already have working in our district and eliminate those barriers for them to become teachers and support our schools in that way. Again, just some other efforts that I want to highlight. Many of you, because you guys approved the contracts. We have some cultural exchange teachers. NOAA has 50. I think we have 48 or 49. So we're not quite at 50, but we're close to that. They're at some priority schools. So again, we were deliberate about where they were placed because we want to make sure we were helping those priority schools fill their vacancies. I believe Palm Bay Elementary has like 9 teachers this year. So I think they have the highest out of all of them. Feedback we've gotten from all the principals is that it's very positive. They're very excited to be here. They've been great within the classroom, so very positive feedback from the principals based on that. We connect with UCF. I speak to the 150 seniors every semester at their Now That You're Graduating event, so it's a nice way for us to connect with them and again share those opportunities that we have in Brevard. The careers page just continues to be revamped. Again, we didn't even have a careers page 5 years ago, and now it's I feel like it's pretty robust, and we're continually trying to get feedback and making it better. We had a fun field trip with our Bethune-Cookman students. We actually got a charter bus, and we chartered 25 of their students to 2 of our schools in the north area last spring. So that was an awesome event. It was a lot of fun. And again, hopefully that's going to be that they'll either intern with our schools, or they'll decide to come teach with us when they finally graduate. And then the last one I want to highlight is the WAVES program. This happened in the spring of last year. FAU reached out to us and say, hey, we've got this grant. Do you want to participate for school counselor certification? Of course, the answer was yes. So we currently have 14 of our teachers pursuing this opportunity for school counseling certification. The grant will pay for 70% of their tuition, 100% of their books, 100% of fees, so it's a great deal. They can also qualify for our district tuition reimbursement on top of that, so almost probably their whole education would be of no cost to them. And then we have another 16 people that have the opportunity to apply for the spring cohort. So we should have at least 30 of our BPS teachers going through our school counseling certification program to help fill that need within the district. So we're super excited about that. New employer orientation, we have that just about every week. Just so you know the numbers, we had 1,268 people attend last year, and then we also piggyback that morning training with the youth mental health training. So that's nice because that's a required training, as you probably know, for our staff. So that's a nice way, since we've got them here, we're getting them some consistent messages. They can get trained on that too. So thank you. Yeah, so I appreciate it. Yeah, I try to be as quick as I can, but I also didn't want to shortchange the work of our recruiters. So, I like to publicly thank them. I don't get that opportunity to do it a lot. Susan Kirk and Tori Huss are our 2 recruiters. They do an amazing job working with our principals, working with the people that are trying to get jobs within our district. They do incredible work, so I just wanted to thank them for all that they do to support our schools. Any questions?
I have a few.
Yeah, I'll go first. First of all, I would just echo your remarks about our recruiting team. They do a great job. When you look at the number of resignations this last year with the numbers of vacancies, the vacancies went down, but the numbers, it just demonstrates the Herculean effort that all of you undertook to get those filled. Otherwise, that number would have even been higher in the vacancies. So kudos to you guys. I appreciate they're even going to the small events. I was about to reach out to him about something that Love Inc. is doing, a work-life program. They're helping people, and before I see pictures, and they were there, and I'm like, you must have been reading my mind, because I never sent the email, but you showed up anyway, so I just appreciate that. I think that when you talk about the need we have to support our new teachers because of the huge numbers, I think that was definitely justified the request for more peer mentor teachers, and so I'm glad we're able to work on that. And for this coming year's budget, I don't see that going down anytime soon until the education programs have a revival across the country, because that's not just a Brevard-specific issue or Florida, it's a nationwide. Thank you for answering my questions. Do we participate in other job fairs? I know it may not be a return on investment always like an immediate, but every touch we're out in the community, we're keeping in people's minds, hey, Brevard Public Schools is an option for you if you're looking for a new job. Somebody who comes and picks up a flyer may not count as an applicant in the event, but it's still maybe planting the seed for something where they're going to come work for us later, and that may not be reflected in the data.
Or they might share it with somebody else. You never know. Yes.
Absolutely. And I still think that one of our under-tapped resources for employees is parents, especially when we think about our volunteer poor people. I see volunteers all the time who are like pretty much at the school so much they might as well just come work there. And to be subs, that's why I thought about subs, but I still think we have a lot of parents who are just, now that maybe they stayed home or had a more flexible job, but now the kids are all in school, that's a good resource. And I know we do that through our social media pages. You can't be a parent on social media in BPS and not constantly see hey, we're hiring at your school.
I want to definitely, on that point, I want to give a shout out to our principals as well, because they do a phenomenal job of, just like what you're saying, right? There's that parent volunteer that's there all the time, and they find out that they have a bachelor's degree. I mean, they're on it, right? They're like,
Right,
hey,
right.
you could become a teacher.
plan for your life.
Or they connect with the substitutes and then they're in a building. I mean, principals are a great job. If they see a new substitute that's never been there before, they're going to intentionally make connections with them and just kind of hear a little bit about their story. And if they get to the point where they
Yeah.
see that they have a bachelor's or interested in teaching, they'll make those connections. So a lot of the openings, the only reason we got to the 677 new hires was, it was all of us, right? It wasn't just the recruiters. I mean, the principals were doing some really hard work above
Right.
everything else that they do and responsible for to try to fill their openings, right? They were also going on Beacon and looking for people that had just applied and.
So what
yeah.
you're saying is recruiting is all of our job.
Recruiting really is all of us, right? I mean,
Right.
it is not just BPS. It is the parents. It's our community organizations. They're always very interested in what we're doing and our hiring. So it's never what are you doing, it's what are we doing? Because
Right.
we all need to get involved in this work. There's the pieces that we could all contribute to this.
And really, the last thing I would just jump in there with is I got to meet 3 of our teachers from Jamaica, 3 of our cultural exchange teachers from Jamaica last week, and the school's excited, the students are excited, they're doing good work, and it's an interesting venture for them. I mean, and I just want to thank our communities because some of these schools, these teachers have come over with either their housing, they help them with the housing, but they've come in without a lot of the things I needed to kind of set up house, and so our school communities have surrounded those schools and asked for help and providing furniture and kitchenwares and things like that. And so, but it's exciting for our students to get to experience that, having a teacher from another country too. So I'm glad we were able to start that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Trent?
Thanks for all you guys are doing. It is a team effort. I know we're running short on time, so I won't repeat a lot. But the main thing I wanted to hit, you did touch on this, Campbell, is getting the parents into the classrooms, getting them into the schools. A lot of success stories there. So we need to keep doing that and make it very easy for our volunteer process. I obviously that one, but we need to get parents into our schools. I think that's a big help. But everything else, you guys are just doing all you can do. Thank you.
Ms. Wright?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to be quick as well. Good job. Kudos. You're doing amazing things. The only thing I would like to say is anything we can do to make it easier to hire, like getting away from Beacon. I have heard that is a nightmare from everybody that has ever had to go through it. Nobody says anything great about that program, unfortunately. So whatever that looks like so that we can make life easier for HR to get those people in and get them through the process, I support that 100%. So thank
Yeah,
you
that's
for
on
everything.
Mr. Dufresne's list. I
Yeah.
mean, it was the first thing on his list. and
I'm
we'll-
sure.
We'll get it done.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Alba, thank you so much for all the stuff that you're doing. I'm going to try to move quickly. We hired a number of recruiters. I think we had agreed to 10, but they agreed to 4. How's that going? How many do you have?
So
How'd that-
we ended up with the district peer mentor teachers is what you're referring to, right? I think you mentioned recruiters. So I just
Yeah.
want to make sure it's clear to
Yes.
everyone that just heard.
However,
I'll take 10 recruiters, but so
Sometimes they're used
after
for
the
that.
interview process, we ended up selecting 2. So they're already in the schools. They're being trained up by our current district peer mentor teachers. They've connected with the principals at the schools that they are supporting. They've already connecting with the teachers that they're going to work with. So yeah, they're hitting the ground running, supporting teachers. So we have a total of 5 right now. We had 3. We have two more additional ones that you all approved. So we almost doubled what we had the year before. So
So are you actively trying to fill those other 2 spots?
we were funded for 2.
Well, I thought we funded 4. Didn't we fund 4?
4. We funded 2.
I thought we funded 4.
I thought 4 was the number that we had talked about.
Yeah,
but-
4 is the number we said we would fund.
No, I think just with the timing of when the ad and the approval happens, I think it would have been a challenge even to have filled those 4.
How many applicants did you have?
We ended up interviewing like 6.
Okay, and they weren't qualified.
But it's just I hate to say that they're not qualified. I mean, they were all phenomenal teachers, right? If not, they would. I'm sure they wouldn't have
Sure.
applied. It's just unique work, right? It's just different of having to give feedback to your colleagues, to give that feedback to your peers, and that the fact that they support teachers in the K through 12 setting. It's not just elementary, it's not just secondary. You're going to have to support every school. So I think if it was advertised in the spring or something like that when teachers hadn't left, I might have gotten a greater pool of applicants to fill it. But and then again, the challenge is you still have to train those teachers to make sure they're doing a good job. So the more you hire, then the more difficult it is to train them well and to really model what those expectations are so that they can go off and be successful and earn that trust of the teachers they're working with, earn that trust of the school administration that they're working with. So I think 2 was a good number to start off with, and
I just know we had all those numbers.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make
if that
sure.
need,
Okay.
I think the need will still be there. So maybe
Sure.
if we want to, then if we have budget for maybe 2 additional ones later on, that can certainly be an option.
Okay, I think we've budgeted for, but it's not a big deal. The school campus fairs, I know that you had spoken about it. I do know that the number of students going through educational programs is significantly lower. I do know that when you go there, there's like 1,000 people and getting access to them. And I agree with you. Thank you for at least trying, but I do know that that's not a very productive way of doing it. You know what I mean? So thank you for at least trying. Now, there was one that said Florida Tech. No, that kind of caught me. Do they have a teaching fair? Do they have teaching program there?
They'll have. Sometimes we don't go just to educational fairs. Some colleges will have like an all majors fair.
Okay,
So
I got
certainly we're thinking of more of our
Catching
secondary
them. Yep.
secondary classrooms. Maybe they're graduating with
Got it.
psychology
Yep.
or biology degrees.
Perfect.
Who maybe don't want to, or chemistry, or maybe don't
Yeah.
want to go to get a master's, or
Good.
or they just always thought maybe they had in their back of the mind they wanted to be a teacher. So again, we try to look under every single rock possible to fill
Yeah.
openings. We have a lot of needs. Secondary science is definitely a need right now.
No, it makes
within
total
our
sense.
schools.
I appreciate that. The reason I was asking that is that UCF and I got into a little tussle about 6 years ago when Eastern Florida State was requesting to create their educational program, and UCF was vetoing it because by law they're allowed to veto any new applications within a certain amount of miles. And just so you know, what UCF does is they were taking in the applications and then they were vetoing us to create our own homegrown teaching college, right? The secondary college. They vetoed it. So I went over and talked to the president. And what they're doing is they're trying to take the students, once they get through, they do their internships in Orlando, and then they get hired in Orlando because once they're over there, look, I'm a student. I would rather be in Orlando, nice downtown, right? And then on top of that, they're making more money. So I could see why they did it. I'm not but one of the problems that we have locally is that the school districts, the college program that's local only has, I think it's like science or something.
It's science, correct?
Right.
Yes.
So it's like, and is that elementary? Is that secondary? It's like elementary.
It's secondary. I mean, I
Okay.
think if you come out certified with the science teaching certificate, you could certainly then maybe just take the elementary subject area exam and then just be
Right.
certified in elementary as well, or teach out of field for the first year. So that
So you
would
could
be an
use it as a
option too.
vehicle to get
Yes,
through.
it could at least get them entryway, right, a foot in the door as with a teaching certificate. Eastern Florida has been working with us, the district, to also start an ESE program as well because they see that's a big need. So hopefully that will be an option for students in the next year or two. So it won't be just science. So they are trying to expand that offering, which I think is wonderful. And then that way, because you're right, if they go out and they start making friendships, they start living somewhere else, it's very hard to kind of
Yeah.
bring them back just because financially it's difficult.
No, it's great. Thank you. And a quick question. We have those teaching programs. I think one's at Bayside, and then there's one at Space Coast. I was a part of creating that. What is the fidelity and numbers coming out of those? Like, because we want to create our homegrown, but like I remember, I still have students that are now that were part of that original class at Space Coast that are now teachers. I run into them all the time. Are they producing? Like, how is that working?
The Space Coast program is just more well. There's greater student participation in the Space Coast one. I know Bayside
Because it's got that elementary school attached to it, so they have the experience of going back there.
I think that teacher at Space Coast, Francine Drabick, she does an amazing
I know
job.
Francine, we're friends.
So a lot of it is driven by the teacher who's on the program. Because it's an elective. At the end of the day, students are they want that relationship with teachers. So if you get that right person in there, that program can really grow. So they have definitely the largest program. I know Bayside, they've made some changes over this past summer. So we're hopeful through those changes and working with.
Is it the same instructor?
CT. No, I think they changed instructor
Okay.
at Bayside. So hopefully with those changes, that additional support with CTE, that they'll get
Okay.
that program a little bit more robust.
And I didn't know the reason is that those are usually locally run, so that like only the kids at Space Coast are attending that. And if it is that this is a high need for the next, you know what I mean, we may want to look at actually opening up some other little centers for that, because if you can, you know what I mean, draw them in.
Yeah.
If that makes
I
sense.
mean, the goal for those programs is after they graduate high school is then they would be hired on as an instructional assistant while they're working, maybe going to Eastern Florida and getting their 4-year degree, still working for us and all that. And then when they finally graduate, then they can become a classroom teacher. So that's kind of the progression with those two programs.
Which is another thing is that we may want to look at, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to propose. We have AP, when kids graduate, we give them, when we graduate the AP, we get $50, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to incentivize those instructors to actually have them become a part of our homegrown Eastern Florida State College program and give them $50 when they apply and they get accepted, so that there's a pathway. Does that make sense to you? Like
Yeah.
incentivizing with the
Yeah,
carrot?
I'm not sure. I know that's all driven like through CAPE funding,
I know
because
you're
there's
trying to get
those individuals that pass can achieve some industry certifications that are also eligible for the $50, just like AP teachers are.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if there's tests with those programs
Okay.
that qualify for that.
Yeah,
Rachel Rutledge would be the one.
Just an
to ask
idea.
on that.
The other thing I was going to say is that in many other areas, and I would like to propose this, all of our teacher friends know other teachers. They're all friends. Like my wife knows probably 20 teachers that are stay-at-home moms that no longer have their children like staying at home. They're actually in school. If you could incentivize those individuals, not my wife, of course, but others, that you could say that if you were able to get somebody to apply and become a teacher, we would be willing to give you X amount of dollars. I think that would probably produce a significant amount of opportunities and applicants, because you have the opportunity for them to actually do that. I think that I'd like to propose that, Dr. Rendell. I think that it's something that if we were able to do that, you would have, like, instead of us having to hire 20 recruiters, you could just have your recruiters literally out there. And I think that would incentivize it, because there's a significant number of them. I have a bunch of other stuff that I'll follow up, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. The board members are really ready to go. They keep packing their handles.
I was gonna say,
And we're
like,
going.
They got to clear
and
this
so-
room and.
These have been some really good conversations, but we do have 4 things. I was going to suggest, if they're not urgent, that we toss them to the next workshop, unless
No,
tonight's
I'd like
meeting
to
goes
bring 'em up
really
tonight.
short.
No,
If
we
it
need,
goes really short, we can put them tonight, but if it doesn't, let's
no,
toss them
we need to, yeah, we need to go through them. I don't think the drug-free workplace, the performance review, I don't think any of these are real long. They're like real quick. They're not very long.
No, the drug-free workplace is just a matter of a head nods from you guys, whether you want to move forward with that
Yeah.
revision of
You've
the
already
policy.
discussed it with me, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
we can,
these should all take less than 5 minutes. Did you want to try to do it now, is what you're telling me? Because I'm about to get beat here.
well, I think I defer to Paul, but if we don't discuss it tonight, it halts it in the process,
So we
correct?
need to, we'll do it
This
tonight.
is the
but-
work session one, so we can actually move this to Tuesday when we're doing the other policy review.
Well, we can move it to.
We'll
we
still
can-
be on track.
Stay on calendar.
Yeah, we'll stay on track, because it's advertised today, and then
We-
it comes back for public hearing at the next board meeting in September.
The drug.
We can do it
So
tonight.
We can fit it in there, so.
We can do it tonight. Can we do it tonight?
You can move it to tonight, you can move it to Tuesday.
Yeah.
We got all the 6,000s on Tuesday, so.
Let's just
would
do it
fit right
tonight.
in there.
We'll do it tonight. We'll do all these tonight. They're not going to be a deal. We're good?
10-4.
All right, we're
Thank
good?
you.
Be back at 5:30?
Yeah. Be back in 30 minutes. All right.